Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the worn sandals of an apprentice scribe in a 13th century Ethiopian monastery. Forget Netflix. Your new obsession is watching ink dry on goatskin. And trust me, if you think your boss is tough, try working for divine perfection. You might not survive the first coffee break. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Seriously, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I'm picturing someone in Oslo at 2 a.m. nibbling leftover waffles. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Cool night air nips your knuckles as you stand before the stone archway of Debra Libanos. Above you, the Milky Way bleeds across the sky like spilled lamp oil, so bright it casts faint shadows on the cobbles. Inside this fortress of faith, silence isn't empty. It hums with centuries of whispered prayers and the ghosts of dried ink. You clutch your meager bundle, a wool blanket, a copper cup, and trembling hands. Brother Tekel meets you at the gate. His face is a cracked riverbed of wrinkles, but his eyes are young sharp. He doesn't greet you with words. Instead, he presses a scrap of parchment into your palm. On it, a single line of Guizi script swims in moonlight. Wisdom builds her house with 7 pillars. The ink, he rasps, is made from midnight and patience. He leads you past sleeping courtyards where monks lie wrapped like cocoons on reed mats. The scent hits you, aged leather, wood smoke, beeswax, and beneath it all, the sharp animal tang of untreated sheepskin. Your future. The scriptorium door groans open. No grand library. This, just a low, windowless room smelling of earth and lamp oil. 20 desks crouch like obedient beasts. At the farthest one, a figure bends so low his nose nearly brushes the surface. This is Brother Mele's, your anchor, your tormentor, your key to unlocking 9 years of staring at letters until they dance. A single oil lamp paints his hands in liquid gold. They move with the unhurried rhythm of a heartbeat, dipping a reed pen, hovering, kissing the stretched skin, lifting away. No scratch or nib, just soft sighs as ink sinks home. He doesn't look up. Tekel nudges you toward a bare desk. On it rests your first test, a rectangle of pale, pebbled goatskin, scraped thin as a dragonfly's wing. You run a finger over it. Cool, stubbornly blank. Feel it. Mele's voice is a low rumble from the shadows, startling you. Not with your skin, with your bones. That hide once climbed mountains, scratched against thorn trees, carried life. Now it carries the word, respect the journey. He rises, a tall silhouette against the lamplight. In his hands he holds a rolled manuscript, dark with age, edges frayed like burnt paper. He places it gently on your desk. It lands with a soft thud, releasing a puff of dust that smells of ancient rain and cedar. Proverbs, he says, copied by my teacher's teacher. Fading. Errors crept in like termites. 9 years I've chased them. Tonight, his eyes pin you. You chase them with me. Start by listening. He unrolls a section. The lamplight spills over dense, angular Guizi characters, marching in perfect lines. He doesn't read them aloud. He touches them. His calloused fingertip traces a word, lingers on a curve. Hear that, he murmurs. You hold your breath. Hear only the distant hoot of an owl. No, he says, reading your silence. Listen deeper, beneath the ink. The scribe who wrote this, his reed snagged here. See the tiny splatter? He was impatient, thinking of his supper. His hand tensed. Mele's own finger trembles slightly, mimicking the error. The word endures, but the human hand, he sighs, a sound like wind through dry reeds. It trembles. Our task is not to judge the tremor, but to honor the intention beneath it, to smooth the path for the next reader. He takes your hand, yours cold and damp, his warm and dry as sun-baked clay, and presses your index finger onto the parchment, not onto a word, onto the blank margin. This, he says, his voice dropping to a whisper that vibrates in your chest, is where you begin, not with letters, with silence, with the space that holds them. Fill your lungs with it. Let it quiet the noise behind your eyes. He guides your finger slowly to the edge of the first ink line. You touch the word. Your fingertip brushes the first character. It feels alive. Not just ink on skin. A ridge, a valley, a tiny monument built by a hand-long return to dust. A shiver runs up your arm. Not fear, recognition. Outside, the owl calls again. Closer now. Brother Melees releases your hand. He returns to his desk, his lamp, his own relentless pursuit of perfection. You stare at the blank margin. The silence around you thickens, presses in like warm water. You close your eyes, breathe in the scent of dust and oil and time. Somewhere in the hills, the owl falls silent. The only sound now is your own breath and the almost imperceptible rasp of a reed pen, kissing truth onto skin, one patient stroke at a time. The chill isn't just in the air. It's seeped into your marrow. Your back groans from hours hunched over that stubbornly pristine parchment, not daring to touch ink yet, just listening to the silence, to Brother Melees's pen sighing against the skin, to your own stomach rumbling like a disgruntled hyena. Monastic life, you're learning, includes a fascinatingly empty dinner bowl. A hand lands on your shoulder. You jump, nearly knocking over the precious, untouched inkwell, thankfully still empty. On your desk, it's Brother Tekel. He doesn't speak. He simply points a bony finger toward the door. Outside, the world is still cloaked in deepest indigo, the stars barely beginning to fade. Pre-dawn, time for vigils, prayer, a surprise breakfast buffet. You follow him out shivering, the stone floor icy under your bare feet. Instead of a chapel, he leads you to a small, smoke-blackened outbuilding clinging to the monastery wall. Inside, it's warm, humid, and smells like a campfire married a pine forest and had a sticky baby. A single oil lamp reveals Brother Melees already there, sleeves rolled up, kneeling before a low stone mortar the size of a small cauldron. Sit, Tekel grunts, nudging you towards a pile of rough sacks. You sit, dust puffs up, smelling faintly of charcoal and forgotten spices. Melees doesn't look up. He's focused on the contents of the mortar, a mound of fine, velvety black powder. He scoops a handful, lets it cascade through his fingers. It falls silently like darkest sand. Soot, he states, his voice echoing slightly in the small space. From the lamps, the purest black, the burnt offering of light itself. He gestures to a clay pot nearby. Inside is a thick golden brown resin, smelling sharply sweet and medicinal. Gum, Arabic, Tekel supplies, seeing your questioning look, from the acacia trees, tears of the desert. He pokes the resin with a stick. It stretches like reluctant honey. Then Melees picks up a large, smooth river stone. Not a tool, really, just a stone, worn by water into a perfect oval. He places it in the mortar on top of the soot. His hands, those instruments of delicate precision on parchment, now grip the stone with a surprising grounded strength. He begins to grind. It's not fast. It's rhythmic, deep. A slow, circular push, a scrape, a lift, another push. Thump, scrape, The sound fills the hut, primal and steady, like the heartbeat of the mountain beneath you. Your turn, Melees says, pausing without breaking the rhythm. He doesn't even sound winded. You scramble up, knees protesting. You approach the mortar. The stone feels cool, heavy, solid. You mimic his motion. Push down, scrape forward. It barely moves the soot. It feels like trying to grind a mountain. Not with your arms, Melees murmurs, watching you struggle. With your weight, from your feet, through your legs, into your center. Let the earth push through you. You plant your bare feet firmly on the packed earth floor. You bend your knees slightly, feeling the connection. You push again, shifting your whole body forward. The stone moves more easily, crushing the soot beneath it, pushing it against the rough granite sides of the mortar. A thin, dark paste begins to form around the edges. Thump, scrape, the rhythm takes over. Your shoulders loosen. The chill fades, replaced by a low heat building in your core. The scent of the soot, the resin, the warm stone fills your lungs. It's hypnotic. You lose track of time, aware only of the push, the scrape, the growing darkness gathering around the stone. Brother Tekel moves silently. He adds a splash of water from a gourd into the mortar. Not much, just enough to make the paste cling. The grinding sound changes, becomes a softer. What a shush, Shush. Then Tekel picks up a small knife. He approaches the pot of gum Arabic with careful precision. He shaves off tiny, translucent slivers of the resin. They fall onto the growing paste in the mortar like golden snowflakes. Now, Meles instructs, his voice low. Not grinding, mixing, gentle, like folding clouds together. You change your motion. Less push, more circular sweep, folding the sticky resin slivers into the inky black paste. It transforms. It becomes glossy deep, almost liquid velvet. The sharp scent of the gum Arabic mellows, blending with the elemental smell of the soot. Meles dips a clean reed stalk into the mixture. He pulls it out, coated in pure, liquid darkness. He holds it up. A single, perfect droplet forms at the tip, catching the lamplight with an impossible depth. It hangs, swelling, defying gravity. Patience, Meles whispers, watching the droplet. Too thick, it claws the parchment. Too thin, it flees like a coward. The droplet stretches, and finally falls. It hits the dirt floor with a soft plip, leaving a tiny, perfect black star. Meles nods, satisfied. He hands you the reed stalk. The first inky touch, he says. Not for writing, for knowing. Dip your finger. You hesitate, then plunge your index finger into the cool, slick blackness in the mortar. It coats your skin completely, a profound, absolute black that seems to swallow the light. You lift your finger. It feels heavy, significant, like you've dipped it into the night sky itself. Meles takes your wrist gently. He turns your hand, examining the ink-covered finger. Then he points to the small, high window of the hut. Outside, the indigo has softened to a deep, cool gray. The first pale streaks of dawn are smudging the horizon. Midnight, he says, nodding at the ink on your finger. And patience. He releases your wrist. Wash in the rainwater barrel outside. Then sleep. The letters can wait for the light and for rested hands. You stumble out into the cool dawn air, your fingers still bearing the sacred stain of the night's work. The rainwater in the barrel is shockingly cold. You plunge your hand in, watching the profound black bleed away, swirling into the clear water like dissipating smoke. Your skin emerges clean, but the weight of that darkness, the rhythm of the stone, the scent of soot and resin, it seeped into you deeper than any ink. Behind you from the scriptorium comes the faint, familiar sigh of a reed pen meeting parchment. Brother Meles hasn't waited for the dawn. He's already chasing the light with liquid midnight. You look at your clean finger. The silence feels different now. Not empty, but full of potential. Full of the deep, patient black, waiting to be shaped into meaning. The reed pen feels alien in your hand. Not like the comforting weight of the grinding stone. This is lighter, yet somehow more dangerous. It's just a hollow stalk dried and hardened. Its tip split into a fine point and carefully smoothed with pumice stone, yet holding it over the precious, pale expanse of your first assigned parchment feels like balancing a spear over a sleeping child. Your knuckles are white. Your breath is shallow. Across the room, Brother Meles' pen sighs its familiar, rhythmic sigh against his work. It sounds effortless, deceptive. It bites. Meles' voice rumbles from his desk, not looking up. If you hold it like a weapon, you flinch, nearly dropping the damn thing. How does he know? You force your fingers to loosen. The reed settles slightly, its dry roughness pressing against your skin. You dip the split tip tentatively into your small personal inkwell, a humble clay cup holding the midnight black fruit of last night's labor. The ink climbs the hollow core, darkening the pale reed. It feels alive, hungry. You bring it trembling over the virgin parchment. The lamplight catches the wet point, a tiny bead of pure darkness swelling, mirroring the droplet Meles showed you. Your mind screams instructions. Curve down, lift, gentle flick for the serif. You learned the Guizi alphabet shapes yesterday, tracing them in dust on the floor. Simple lines, angular, strong. On the floor, they felt powerful. Here, above this impossibly clean skin, they feel like impossible mountains. You commit. You press down. It's not a letter. It's a catastrophe. The reed tip catches. It snags a tiny, unseen imperfection in the skin. The controlled bead of ink explodes. A fat, ragged blotch erupts, spreading like spilled oil, obliterating the space meant for the sacred first character of wisdom. Your heart stops. Panic, cold and sharp, floods your veins. You've ruined it. On your very first touch, you ruined the word before you even wrote it. A shadow falls over your desk. Brother Mele's. He doesn't look angry. He looks curious. He studies the ink blot, tilting his head. It's already soaking in a dark, chaotic island marring the pale shore. Ah, he says, a single syllable holding worlds. He picks up the reed, penny dropped. He examines the tip, running his thumb pad gently over the split nib. Too tight, too eager. The reed. He holds it up, it needs to breathe. He dips the pen into your inkwell. The motion fluid and sure. The ink clings perfectly, forming that obedient droplet. He doesn't bring it to your ruined parchment. Instead, he holds it poised over a scrap of discarded skin lying near your inkwell. Watch, he murmurs. Not the shape, the breath. He lowers the tip, but he doesn't push. He lets the weight of the pen itself, guided by his relaxed fingers, bring the tip into the gentlest possible contact with the skin. The ink flows not because he forces it, but because it wants to drawn onto the receptive surface. He moves his hand slowly, steadily, but his fingers holding the reed are loose. There's no tension in his wrist. It's like watching water flow downhill. A perfect clean line appears. Not thick, not thin, just straight. He lifts the pen. The line ends cleanly. He makes another parallel, then a short crossbar connect him. The basic shape of he, the first letter, emerges simple and strong, effortless. The nib must kiss the skin, he says softly. His eyes on his own work, not you. Not wrestle it, not fear it. A kiss, light, confident. The ink flows on the breath between the reed and the skin. Hold your own breath, he glances at you. And you strangle the word. He hands the pen back to you. The ruined parchment remains, its dark stain a stark accusation. But Mele's points his chin toward the scrap he just used. Practice the breath, not the letter, just the kiss. You take the pen again. You look at the ruined blot on your good parchment. The shame is hot, but you look back at the scrap, just scrap, discarded skin, imperfect, unworthy of scripture, perfect for failure. You dip the pen, focus on the droplet, feel the weight of the reed in your loose fingers. Think of Mele's effortless descent. Let the earth pull it down. You lower your hand, let gravity do the work. The tip touches the scrap. Kiss. A tiny hut appears. You lift. Just a dot. Clean. Controlled. No explosion. You breathe out. You didn't realize you'd been holding it. You dip again. Lower. Kiss. This time, you let your hand move slightly sideways as the pen touches. A tiny wobbly dash appears. Shaky but contained. No blots. Dip. Lower. Kiss. Move. A slightly longer, still shaky line. Like a child's first drawing. Dip. Lower. Kiss. Move. Lift. Over and over. Not forming letters. Just learning the feel of contact. The release of ink on an exhale. The rhythm starts to emerge, slow and deliberate. Dip. Lower. Kiss. Move. Lift. Breathe. The ruined parchment fades from your immediate awareness. The world shrinks to the tip of the reed, the receptive skin of the scrap, and the rhythm of your own breath sinking with the gentle sigh of Mele's pen across the room. Your hand cramps, your shoulder aches, but you keep practicing the kiss. The scrap becomes a constellation of tiny dashes, dots and squiggles, none perfect, none sacred, all lessons in breath and touch. Hours later, Mele's rises to leave for vespers. He pauses by your desk, looks not at the ruined good parchment, but at the chaotic ink-covered scrap. He picks it up, studies the dense forest of your practice marks. He doesn't smile, but he gives a single, slow nod. The nib, he says, placing the scrap back down, is learning to breathe. Tomorrow, perhaps, it will whisper. He walks away. You look at your scrap. It's a mess, but within the mess, there's a pattern emerging, a rhythm, a conversation starting between your breath, your hand, the reed, and the skin. The catastrophic blot on the good parchment still stares back, but its power feels diminished. It's not the end. It's just the first messy kiss. A necessary stumble before the word could truly begin to flow. You pick up the reed again. Dip it. Lower it towards the scrap. Breathe out. Kiss. The word 9 hangs in the air of the scriptorium, thick as the incense smoke coiling from a corner brazier. Brother Melees hasn't moved since he spoke it. He's staring at the section of Proverbs laid out before him on his desk, weighted at the corners with smooth, dark river stones. The lamplight pools around it, making the faded Guizi characters seem to swim in amber. 9 years. The number lands in your gut with the weight of one of those stones. You glance down at your own scrap parchment, littered with hesitant dashes and blobs, the chaotic scribbles of a few hours. 9 years of this? Of staring until your eyes burn, of holding your breath over ink, of chasing perfection across the skin of dead goats? The sheer, quiet immensity of it makes your spine prickle. Melees finally stirs. He doesn't look at you. His gaze is fixed on the parchment, but it feels like he's looking through it, into some vast internal landscape. He picks up his reed pen, not to write, but to trace, hovering a hair's breadth above the ancient ink. This line, he murmurs, his voice barely disturbing the silence. His pen tip glides over a word near the top. Discretion. He pauses, copied faithfully. But the scribe, he wrote in haste, or perhaps fear. See the tail of the toe? It trembles, it breaks its spine. His finger touches the spot gently. A lover tracing a scar. A small thing, barely visible, but the eye stumbles over it, like a pebble in a pilgrim's path. He unrolls the scroll further with infinite care, the stiffened leather whispering. He stops at a section lower down. The ink here is blotchy, uneven in places, as if the scribe's hand had been unsteady. Here the word understanding. Tamed. He points to the second character, a complex cluster of lines. The ink bled. See, the scribe pressed too hard, or his mix was too thin. The lines blur, meaning becomes foggy. He rolls the section back slowly, his movements deliberate, reverent. He picks up a different tool, not his writing reed, but a finer, needle-like stylus made of bone, its tip impossibly sharp. He dips it not into the main inkwell, but into a smaller clay dish holding a viscous, translucent fluid, gum, Arabic mixed with a whisper of water. You realize. The correction medium. Our work, he says, his voice regaining its grounded rumble, settling back into the present moment with you, is not to erase the past, not to condemn the tremor or the bleed. Our work, he brings the bone stylus down with breathtaking precision, is to clarify the path. You lean closer, forgetting your own clumsy efforts. He touches the stylus, loaded with a clear gum, to the very center of the blurry character for to aim. He doesn't scrub, he doesn't cover. With minuscule, almost invisible strokes, taps, really, he applies the gum within the existing bloodlines. It's like watching a surgeon repair a butterfly's wing. The gum sinks in, slightly darkening the parchment where it touches the old ink. It acts like a subtle dam, defining the edges that had bled into obscurity, where the character had been a smudged suggestion. Sharpness begins to emerge. Definition, the idea of understanding, regains its shape. He moves to the trembling taw from earlier. Here, he uses the stylus differently. With a very tip, he traces along the broken spine of the character, reinforcing its intended path with the faintest line of gum. It's not adding new ink. It's strengthening the existing, faded intention, guiding the reader's eye along the path the original scribe meant to lay down. It's an act of profound empathy, seeing the error not as a flaw, but as a moment of human struggle, and offering a quiet hand to steady it. He sits back. The corrected characters don't shout. They don't look new. They look clearer, as if a thin veil of dust has been gently brushed away, revealing the original intent beneath years of wear and the scribe's momentary lapse. 9 years, Melees repeats, looking not at the scroll, but now directly at you. His eyes hold no boastfulness, only a deep, weathered patience. Not to write it anew, but to listen, to hear the whispers trapped in the fading ink, the sighs caught in the tremors, to honor the hands that came before, however faltering, to smooth the path for the hands that will come after. He gestures towards a vast, partially unrolled scroll, its beginning marked by faint scoring from years of handling, its end still tightly furled, waiting. Each error corrected, it is a small act of love for the word and for the fragile vessels that carry it. He picks up his reed pen again, dips it, and returns to his own section. The soft sigh of nib on skin resumes, the rhythm unbroken. You look down at your own scrap parchment. The chaotic dashes and blobs suddenly feel different. Not just practice, not just failure. They feel like potential vessels. Fragile, yes. Imperfect, absolutely. But capable, perhaps, with enough listening, enough patience, enough care of carrying something forward. Not rewriting the world, just smoothing a tiny, tiny section of the path. You pick up your reed pen, dip it, feel the cool slide of ink in the hollow stalk. You bring it over a relatively clean patch of scrap skin, not thinking of letters, thinking of paths, thinking of whispers, thinking of 9 years of quiet. Relentless love poured into fading ink. You lower the pen, you breathe out, you let the nib kiss the skin. Not a dash this time, a tiny deliberate dot, a single point of focus, a beginning. The reed pen hovers. Your knuckles are still white. But the tremor is less about fear, now more about the sheer stubborn resistance of the goat skin beneath it. You're attempting your first proper letter. A simple aleph, the angular, open-armed beginning of so many sacred words. You dip, breathe out, lower kiss. The nib touches, ink flows, and immediately skitters sideways along a tiny, invisible ridge in the skin. Your aleph develops a drunken, unintended curve, like a bowed head. Frustration, hot and metallic, floods your mouth. Perfection feels galaxies away. Across the room, Brother Mele's rhythmic sigh pauses. You feel his gaze before you see it. He doesn't sigh in disapproval at least. He simply watches your struggle for a long moment, the lamplight catching the silver strands in his beard. You fight the skin, he observes, his voice a low rumble in the quiet. You fight the ink. You fight the pen. You even fight your own breath. He rises slowly, his joints whispering like dry parchment. He walks over, not to your desk, but to the small, high window slit. He gestures for you to join him. You stand, your legs stiff, shoulders knotted. Outside, the sun is high, baking the monastery courtyard into stillness. Dust motes dance in the sharp beam of light slicing through the window. Below, in a patch of sparse shade, a monk, Brother Elias. The gardener is on his knees, not praying, weeding. His movements are slow, deliberate. He doesn't yank the stubborn grasses. He digs his fingers deep beside the root, feels for its anchor, loosens the earth around it with patient wiggles, and then draws it out, whole and clean. It looks effortless, but you see the focused stillness in his shoulders, the quiet intensity in his hands. Brother Elias, Mele's murmurs, does not fight the weed. He understands it, knows its grip, works with the earth that holds it. He turns his gaze from the courtyard back to you. The parchment, it is not your enemy. It is your ground. Your aleph is not a soldier to be commanded onto the field. It is a seed to be placed into the ground. He walks back to your desk. He doesn't touch your pen or your disastrous aleph. He places his own calloused fingertip on the blank space beside your blotchy attempt. Feel it, he instructs. Not just the surface, the life of it. The valleys where the goat scratched, the hills where the muscle was thick, the paths the scraper took, smoothing it. You close your eyes, press your finger down. At first, it just feels cool and slightly pebbled, then deeper. You feel the subtle variations, a shallow dip here, a barely perceptible ridge there, like the contours of a miniature landscape. Now, Mele says, his voice dropping to a near whisper, resonant in the stone room. The aleph, see it in your mind, not as ink on skin, as intention, as a shape of breath, a vessel waiting. He pauses. Where does it want to sit in this landscape? Where will the ground receive it best? Where will its roots find purchase? You open your eyes, look at the skin beneath your finger, then back at the imagined aleph in your mind, not forcing it onto a specific spot, feeling for a suitable place. A patch that feels receptive, flat but not dead, smooth but with a hint of tooth. You find it, a thumb width away from your first failed attempt. Mele's nods once, a silent approval. Dip, breathe, not to make the seed grow, to place it gently, Trust the ground to hold it. Trust the ink to find its way. You dip the reed. The droplet forms perfect midnight. You breathe out long and slow, emptying your chest of the coiled frustration. You lower the pen, not aiming, not pushing, placing. You let the weight of the reed bring the nib down onto the spot you'd felt was receptive. Kiss. The ink flows, not a skitter, not a blot. A clean, sharp line forms as you draw the reed steadily sideways. The first arm of the olive. It's straight, strong, anchored. You lift the pen, the line ending crisp. Dip again. Breathe. Place the nib for the second arm, connecting it with a short, sure stroke, not fighting. Coaxing, working with the grain of the skin, the flow of the ink. The completed olive stands on your scrap parchment. Not perfect by Melies' standards. The angles aren't razor sharp, but it's clear, it's whole. It belongs where it sits. The difference between your first drunken scrawl, and this is like the difference between a shout and a prayer. Suddenly, a loud noise broke the focused silence. The sound was deafening, echoing off the stone walls. You jumped in fright, your pen tip trembling, leaving a small drop of ink on the table. The Melies brothers didn't move. He just sighed, his voice half resigned, half loving. From the doorway, a large, shaggy white goat peers in. One liquid brown, I fixed on you. A wisp of hay dangling from its mouth. Brother Tekel appears behind it, trying to shoo it away. Bah! Tekel grunts at the goat. Out. Sacred space. The goat, whose name you'll later learn is Yared, after the saint naturally, just blinks slowly, utterly unimpressed. It takes a deliberate step into the scriptorium, its cloven hooves clicking on the stone. It walks straight towards Brother Melies' desk, sniffs his inkwell critically, then sneezes again, showering a priceless folio with microscopic droplets of goat mist. Melies doesn't shout. He reaches out not to hit the goat, but to scratch it firmly behind one ear. Yared leans into the scratch, emitting a low, rumbling bleat of pure contentment. Yared believes, Melies says drily, wiping the folio with his sleeve, that all spaces are goat space, especially if they contain interesting smells or things to sneeze on. Tekel finally manages to grab Yared's collar and haul the unrepentant creature backwards out of the door, muttering darkly about sacrilegious ungulates. The heavy door thuds shut. Silence floods back in, but it's a different silence now, lighter, tinged with the absurdity of a diva goat. Melies looks back at your parchment, at your solitary, humble, but anchored olive. A flicker of something that might be amusement touches his eyes. See, he says, even the goat knows. Perfection is a mountain goat. It leaps where it wills. We can only tend the path, plant the seeds, and clean up the messes. He gestures towards the tiny ink flick your jump had caused. Even unexpected blessings leave their mark. He returns to his desk, the rhythmic sigh of his pen resumes. You look at your olive. You look at the goat sneeze mist still glistening faintly on Melies' folio under the lamplight. You look at the tiny ink flick on your desk. Your startled reaction to a holy goat's interruption. A slow, unexpected smile touches your lips. Not a laugh, just a softening, a release. You dip your pen again, breathe out, find a new patch of receptive ground on the scrap skin. Place the nib, kiss, draw another olive. Still not perfect, but rooted, breathing, and somehow blessed by the lingering ghost of goat sneeze in the air. The rhythmic sigh of Brother Melies' pen is your anchor. Dip, kiss, lift, breathe. Your own movements on the scrap skin are slower, clumsier, but the frantic edge is gone. You're planting olives, one after another, finding receptive patches on the landscape of discarded skin, letting the ink settle where the ground welcomes it. The world shrinks to the circle of lamplight, the scent of leather and lamp oil, the dry rasp of reed on parchment, and the comforting solidity of the stone floor beneath your knees. Then, a new sound broke the silence. At first faint, the sound of drum beats echoed from the flat stone roof of the distant monastery. It was not the fine rain of the highlands, but the first real downpour of the season. The rain fell like thousands of tiny fists pounding on the roof, filling the copy room with a relentless clatter that reverberated between the stone walls until the very air itself trembled. The change is immediate. The dry parchment under your fingers seems to sigh, subtly softening, absorbing the moisture-thickened air. The ink in your small clay beads differently on the reed tip, seeming slightly reluctant. You glance at Brother Melee's. His rhythm hasn't faltered. If anything, his movements seem even more deliberate, more focused, as if tuning his own internal cadence to the drumming rain. He doesn't look up, but he speaks, his voice somehow cutting through the watery roar, calm and centered. The rain speaks, he says, his pen continuing its graceful dance. Listen to what it says to the ink, to the skin. You try. You dip your pen. The droplet forms, but it's larger, heavier, clinging more stubbornly to the nib. You lower it to your scrap. Kiss. The ink flows, but sluggishly, spreading slightly wider than before, the edges feathering faintly into the dampened skin. Your olive looks blurry, soft-edged, unmoored. The clean definition you started to grasp evaporates like mist. Frustration threatens to bubble up again. The rain feels like an enemy, washing away your fragile progress. Meles pauses. He lays down his pen with deliberate care. He rises, a tall, still figure in the flickering lamplight. He walks not to the window, but to the heavy wooden door of the scriptorium. He unlatches it and pulls it open just a crack. The roar of the rain swells, crashing into the quiet room like a physical wave. Cool, damp air, rich with the scent of wet earth, stone, and bruised herbs swirls in. It carries the sound undistorted now, a vast, encompassing symphony of water meeting the thirsty world. Meles stands in the doorway, silhouetted against the gray deluge outside. His face turned upward slightly, eyes closed. He breathes in deeply, his chest expanding. He's not just hearing the rain, he's receiving it. After a long moment, he turns back to you. The lamplight catches the fine spray of moisture on his beard. His eyes, when they meet yours, hold a quiet intensity. Come, he says simply. You hesitate, looking down at your blurry olive. The rain seems chaotic, disruptive. He gestures again more firmly. You stand, your stiff joints protesting, and join him at the doorway. The courtyard is transformed. A silver curtain of rain obscures the far walls. Torrents cascade off roofs, carving frantic rivers in the packed earth before vanishing into thirsty ground. The sound is immense, primal, a force that hums in your bones. It's not just noise, it's a presence. The word, Meles says, his voice pitched to carry over the downpour, but without strain, was not written in a vacuum. It was breathed in deserts, chanted in storms, whispered beside springs. The rain, it washes the dust from the world. It also washes the dust from our seeing. He steps back inside, leaving the door ajar. The roar remains a constant background thrum, but somehow inside the scriptorium now it feels different. Less an intrusion, more context. A reminder of the living world beyond the stone walls and the stretched skin. He walks back to his desk, not to his current work. He unrolls a different section of the great proverb scroll. This part is older, the ink more faded, the skin darker, stained in places. He points to a line near the top. The characters here are less crisp, more organic, smudged in places where damp might have once touched them. The words of the wise, he reads, tracing the guizi with a reverence that acknowledges its imperfections, are like goads, like firmly embedded nails. Look here. He indicates a specific word. Nails. The ink is slightly runny at the edges, the lines less sharp than elsewhere. Copied during the chirant, perhaps, or stored where damp crept in. The scribe fought it. See how he pressed harder here, trying to force clarity. He points to a dark, thick spot where the ink had pooled. He fought the rain's brother, the damp, and the damp won a little. But he leans closer, his finger hovering over the softened word. Does the meaning vanish? Does the nail lose its strength because its outline blurs in the mist? He looks at you, waiting. You stare at the word mosmer. It's not sharp, it's weathered, but it's undeniably there, solid, rooted. The blurring doesn't erase it. It frames it differently. It speaks of time, of exposure, of endurance. The rain reminds us, Meles says, his voice softer now, blending with the water's roar, that permanence is not always about sharp edges. Sometimes it's about resilience, about sinking roots deep enough to hold, even when the surface softens. He gestures back toward your desk, towards your scrap with its rain-softened olives. Today, the ink flows differently. The skin breathes differently. Don't fight the rain. Listen to it. Write with it. Let the word find its form in the damp. He returns to his own work. He dips his pen. The droplet forms, heavy with the humidity. He lowers it to his parchment. He doesn't press harder. He moves slower. His strokes are more deliberate, allowing the ink to settle into the receptive, dampened skin, accepting the slight feathering at the edges as part of the day's unique conversation between material and intention. The sigh of his pen resumes, deeper, slower, syncing with the rhythm of the rain on the roof. You walk back to your desk. The drumming rain is no longer an enemy. It's the heartbeat of the monastery, the breath of the season. You look at your scrap. Your blurred olives look different now. Not failures, not soft, resilient, like ferns uncurling in the damp, like stones smoothed by a river. You dip your pen, feel the heavy droplet cling. You breathe in the scent of rain and earth and ancient parchment. You find a receptive patch on the dampened scrap skin. You lower the pen. You don't fight. You let the weight of the reed, the pull of the damp skin, guide the nib. Kiss. The ink flows, spreading slightly, feathering at the edges. You draw the lines for the olive slower, more deliberately, letting the ink settle where it will. The result isn't sharp. It's diffuse, strong in its center, softer at its boundaries. It looks like it belongs to this rainy afternoon. Outside, the downpour continues its relentless song. Inside, the sigh of Melaze's pen and the softer shush of your own blend with the rain's rhythm. The words being traced, corrected, whispered onto the skin aren't fighting the storm. They're learning to endure it, to be written within it, to hold their meaning not in spite of the blur, but perhaps in some small way, because of the depth the dampness reveals. You dip the pen again. The rain drums on. You breathe out. Plant another seed in the softened ground. The rhythmic shush scrape of your pen on the damp parchment has become a lullaby, syncing with the drumming rain outside. Your shoulders have settled into a low-grade ache, a constant hum beneath the surface focus. It's the ache of stillness, of muscles held in the service of minute control. You barely notice it anymore, like the distant roar of the chirem itself, until you shift. A sharp, electric jolt shoots from your lower back, down your left leg. It's so sudden, so intense that your hand spasms. The reed pen skitters wildly across your scrap parchment, leaving a jagged, ink-smeared scar right through a row of your carefully planted, rain-softened olives. You gasp, dropping the pen with a clatter that sounds obscenely loud in the rain-muffled scriptorium. Pain radiates from your sacrum, a hot, insistent throb that banishes all thoughts of ink and character. You instinctively curl forward, pressing a fist into the small of your back, your face contorting. Across the room, the steady sigh of Brother Melaze's pen stops. You feel his gaze, steady and unsurprised. You don't look up, too busy wrestling with the betrayal of your own body. 9 years? How could anyone endure this posture for 9 years without turned stone? The body remembers. Melaze's voice cuts through your silent agony. It's not unsympathetic, merely factual. It remembers every hour bent over the word, every moment of tension held in reverence or fear. He rises, his own movement fluid despite the years etched into his frame. He doesn't come to your desk. Instead, he walks to the small alcove where spare parchment and tools are stored. He returns holding two objects: a small, unglazed clay jar, stopper sealed with beeswax, and a short, thick beeswax candle stub, its wick blackened. He places them on the edge of your desk. Cold pressed sesame oil. He nods toward the jar. Brother Elias grows the seeds. Sister Azeb presses them. It knows the ache of the earth. He picks up the candle stub, and this remembers the light. He pulls a flint and steel striker from his robe. With a practiced flick, a spark leaps onto the charred wick. It glows, then catches, blossoming into a small, steady flame. The scent of warm beeswax joins the aromas of rain, parchment, and lamp oil. Melaze holds a candle over the clay jar, tilting it just so. A thin stream of molten wax pours from the candle's edge, not onto the jar, but directly onto its cool, porous surface. The wax hit spreads and almost instantly hardens into a smooth, pale disc, binding itself to the clay. Watch, he instructs, his eyes on the hardening wax. The wax flows. It meets the cool clay. It stops. It holds. It becomes a foundation. He drips another small stream onto the first hardened disc. This new wax flows over the cool surface of the first layer, then hardens again, building up slightly. He repeats the process slowly, deliberately, building a small, layered pillar of wax on the jar's lid. It doesn't fight the coolness. It uses it. It builds upon what is already held. He sets the candle down, leaving the small wax pillar cooling on the jar. He unstoppers the clay jar. Inside, the oil is a deep, rich amber, smelling nutty and warm, earthy and comforting. He dips 2 fingers into the oil. Your turn, he says, holding his oil-slicked fingers toward you. Not on the back, on the source of the remembering. Confused, still wincing. You gesture vaguely toward your lower back. Malaise shakes his head. He points instead to the base of your spine. The spot where the pain had erupted like lightning. Here, where the root of the spine meets the earth of your sitting bones, where the stillness gathers its weight. Self-consciously, you reach back, fumbling under your rough tunic. Your fingers find the knotted tension at the very top of your pelvis, the epicenter of the radiating ache. It feels hard, hot, like a clenched fist beneath the skin. Now, Meles instructs, his voice low and steady. Press, not to fight the knot, to listen to it, like listening to the tremor in the ink. What is it holding? You press your oiled fingers into the knot. The pain flares sharp and bright. You bite your lip, but beneath the flare you feel it, a dense core of tension, a lifetime of slouching, of hunching over desks, of carrying burdens literally on your back. Now, concentrated into this single point by hours of unnatural stillness. Breathe into it, Meles murmurs. Not around it, into it, like filling a wineskin. It feels counterintuitive, breathing into pain. But you try. You inhale slowly, deeply, imagining the breath flowing down your spine, not stopping at the pain, but pushing gently into that clenched knot. On the exhale, you imagine the knot softening, releasing its grip just a fraction. You press your fingers, not harder, but with a steady, listening pressure. Inhale, push the breath into the stone. Exhale, imagine the stone crumbling, grain by grain. It doesn't vanish. The knot remains a hard, resentful presence. But something shifts. The sharp, electric jolt recedes, replaced by a deep, throbbing ache. Manageable, acknowledged. The radiating pain down your leg lessens, fading to a dull murmur. The warmth of the sesame oil seeps in, a comforting counterpoint to the deep ache. Meles watches, his expression unreadable. He picks up the beeswax candle again. He holds it near the small pillar he built on the oil jar, but doesn't drip more wax. He lets the heat of the flame gently warm the existing layers, softening their edges slightly, making them flow together into a smoother, more unified mass. The body, he says, his eyes on the softening wax, is not just a tool for the spirit. It is the spirit's vessel, its parchment. Its pain is its own faded ink, its own tremor. It needs correction too, not by force, by warmth, by patient listening, by building layer upon layer of awareness. He blows out the candle. The scent of extinguished wick joins the nutty aroma of the oil. He gestures to the jar. Use it. When the body remembers, too, loudly. Listen to its faded script. Offer it warmth. Offer patience. It carries the word, after all. It deserves the same care we give the skin. He returns to his desk. The sigh of his pen resume is a little slower, perhaps, acknowledging the body's silent presence in the work. You sit back slowly, cautiously. The knot is still there, a dense echo beneath the warming oil. But it's quieter now, contained. It's no longer a scream. It's a low chant, a reminder of the vessel's limits and its endurance. You look at the jar of sesame oil, the beeswax stub beside it. Simple things, earth and fire and care. You look at your ruined scrap parchment, scarred by your spasm, not wasted, just corrected by pain. You dip a fresh reed pen. You breathe deeply, feeling the breath move down into the quieted ache in your back. You find an untouched corner of scrap skin. You lower the pen, kiss. The ink flows. You draw an olive. It's slow, careful, aware of the vessel, holding the hand that holds the pen. It's not perfect, but it's steady, rooted, written with the full awareness of the body that remembers. The scent hits like a physical wave, crashing through the heavy stillness of the scriptorium just as the midday light bleeds weakly through the high window slit. It's thick, earthy, insistent. The unmistakable aroma of simmering shiro, the humble lentil and chickpea flour stew that forms the bedrock of monastic sustenance. It carries notes of toasted spices, Berbera's fiery warmth, fenugreek's faint bitterness, and beneath it all, the deep, comforting bass note of slow-cooked onions. Your stomach lulled into a kind of numb ache by the sesame oil and focus work, abruptly roars back to life with a vengeance that makes your spine twinge in protest. Concentration shatters. You're carefully tracing pen wobbles, leaving a tiny, unintended hook on the tail of a lamet. Across the room, Brother Melese's rhythmic sigh pauses. He doesn't look up immediately. He finishes the character he's working on, a complex tsada, with unhurried precision. Then slowly, deliberately, he lays down his reed pen. He closes his eyes, takes a long, slow breath deep into his lungs, expanding his chest fully. He holds it for a moment, savoring the complex bouquet invading the sacred space of parchment and ink. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touches the corners of his lips. Not a grin, more like the recognition of an old, familiar friend. Sister Zeb, he murmurs, his voice warm with appreciation, is preaching a sermon today, a sermon on patience rewarded. He opens his eyes, their usual intensity softened, and possibly on the virtues of extra onions. He rises, his joints emitting soft pops. He doesn't head straight for the door. Instead, he walks to a small niche carved into the stone wall near his desk. Inside rests a simple wooden bowl, a roughly carved wooden spoon, and a folded, coarse linen napkin. He gathers them with the same reverence. He shows the scrolls. "Come," he says, nodding towards the door. The body carries the spirit. The spirit thrives on prayer and sometimes on lentils. You follow him out into the courtyard. The rain has softened to a fine, misty drizzle cool on your face. The scent of shiro is even stronger here, mingling with the petrichor rising from the damp earth. It's coming from the low, smoke-stained building opposite the scriptorium, the refectory. A small line of monks is already forming, their hoods pulled up against the drizzle, bowls in hand. There's a quiet murmur of conversation, a sense of relaxed relief after the focused morning silence. Brother Tekkel stands guard at the refectory door, not with a scowl, but with the weary authority of a shepherd managing his flock. He spots Melese and gives a curt nod. Then his sharp eyes land on you. "New scribe," he grunts. "Don't drip stew on the word." It might be the closest thing to a welcome you'll get from him. Inside, the refectory is warm, steamy, and filled with the soft clatter of wood on clay. Sister Zeb, a woman as sturdy and grounded as the mountains themselves, stands behind a massive iron pot, wielding a ladle like a scepter. Her face is flushed from the heat, her eyes bright. She spots Melese, and her stern expression melts into genuine warmth. "Brother Melese." Her voice is rich and resonant, filling the space. "I added extra kororima today for the wisdom seekers. Keeps the eyes sharp for those tiny squiggles." She plunges the ladle deep into the thick stew and heaves a generous portion into his bowl. The shiro is a deep, rich reddish brown, flecked with golden droplets of nidakaib. Steam rises in fragrant clouds. Melese accepts the bowl with both hands, bowing slightly. "Your wisdom nourishes more than bodies, Sister Zeb. It nourishes the patience for squiggles." "Your turn." Sister Zeb eyes you appraisingly. "The new hands," she states, stiff, without waiting for an answer. She ladles a slightly less volcanic portion into your bowl. Eat. Let the warmth loosen the knots the reed pen ties. The stew looks intimidatingly thick, almost like spicy mud, but the aroma is irresistible. You find a space at one of the long, low wooden tables. The benches are worn smooth by generations of sitting bones. You sit beside Melese. The heat from the bowl seeps into your cold hands. You pick up your wooden spoon. It feels clumsy, thick, after the delicate reed pen. You scoop up a small amount of the thick stew. It clings stubbornly to the spoon. You blow on it cautiously, then take a tentative bite. Floodgates open. The warmth spreads through your chest instantly, a comforting glow. The flavors are deep, complex. The earthiness of the lentils and chickpea flour, the slow sweetness of caramelized onions, the layered heat of the berbera, the fragrant lift of cardamom, and the subtle bitterness of fenugreek tying it all together. The nidakaib adds a luxurious, nutty richness. It's simple. It's profoundly satisfying. It's exactly what your cold, stiff, ink-stained body craved. You take another, larger spoonful, forgetting caution. Meleys eats with the same deliberate focus he applies to correcting a faded character. Each spoonful is lifted, considered, savored. No rush. He chews slowly, his eyes half closed, appreciating the textures, the unfolding layers of flavor. Sister Zeb, he says between spoonfuls, his voice relaxed, understands the alchemy of necessity. Poverty transformed into abundance through spice and care. A humble pot, a sacred text. Around you, the quiet murmur continues. Monks discuss the rain's effect on the herb garden, a stubborn mule in the valley, the progress of a new roof thatch. Mundane things, earthy things. The sacred silence of the scriptorium feels worlds away, replaced by the gentle symphony of spoons on bowls, soft conversation, and the contented sighs of warm bodies being nourished. You finish your stew, scraping the bowl clean with a hunk of dense, sour injera bread. The warmth has seeped deep into your limbs, loosening muscles, the sesame oil only quieted. The persistent knot in your back feels less like a clenched fist, more like a sleeping cat. A pleasant lethargy spreads through you, not the exhaustion of pain, but the contentment of being filled. Meleys finishes his last spoonful. He carefully wipes his bowl clean with the last scrap of injera, then folds his linen napkin with precise corners. He looks at your empty bowl, then at your face, which probably carries a look of sleepy satisfaction. See, he says, a quiet amusement in his eyes. The word needs strong vessels. Lentils build strong vessels. Even he glances meaningfully towards the scriptorium door. For chasing squiggles. He rises, bowl and spoon in hand. You follow suit. The pleasant weight of the meal settling in your stomach. Outside, the misty drizzle continues, cool on your warm skin. The scent of shiro lingers on your clothes, mixing with the smell of rain and wet stone. As you walk back towards the scriptorium, the heavy silence within no longer feels like a barrier. It feels like a space waiting to be re-entered, carrying within you the warmth of lentils, the echo of shared humanity, and Sister Zeb's earthy benediction, the reed pen and the fading inkweight. But now you return to them not just with tired hands, but with a quietly humming, well-tended vessel. The warmth of Sister Zeb's shiro, what sits in your belly like a small, contented sun, the persistent knot in your back while still present, has unclenched into a drowsy murmur beneath the lingering sesame oil. Back in the scriptorium, the drumming rain has softened to a steady, hypnotic shush against the stone roof. Lamplight pools on the desks, casting long, dancing shadows. The rhythmic sigh-scrape sigh of Brother Meleys' pen resumes, but slower now, deeper, synced with the rain's lullaby and the post-meal heaviness in your limbs. You pick up your reed pen, the wood warm from your hand. Dipping it feels like moving through honey. The ink flows, you place the nib, kiss the skin, but your olives emerge drowsy, their lines soft and dreamy, edges blurring like shapes seen through sleep-heavy eyes. Across the room, Brother Meleys pauses, not to correct you. He lays down his pen entirely. He leans back slightly on his stool, a rare departure from his habitual forward bend. His gaze drifts to the section of faded proverbs before him, not with his usual sharp scrutiny, but with a soft, almost distant focus. The lamplight catches the silver in his beard, the deep lines around his eyes that aren't just from squinting at ink. Then it starts, not words, not prayer, a low resonant hum. It's barely audible at first, vibrating more in your chest than in your ears, blending seamlessly with the rain's shush and the soft sputter of the lamp. Its simple melody, ancient and looping, rising and falling like a gentle sigh-given sound. It's Nguizi, the sacred tongue, but stripped of complex theology. The words are simple, earthy, almost childlike. Gabar sabi, tbukam saiti. Jebber, sabidukam, and with diaries say with diaries why. The farmer, his wisdom like the sun. Meleys' voice is weathered, rough-edged like unpolished stone. yet carries the melody with a profound, unadorned tenderness. He's not singing to anyone. He's singing with the parchment, with the fading ink, with the rain. His calloused fingertip rests lightly on a character as he hums the next phrase, tracing its faded curve not for correction, but for companionship. His patience like the moon of kings. The simple words paint pictures in the drowsy air. A bent-backed farmer turning soil under a relentless sun. The slow, silent arc of the moon governing the night. Its wisdom stripped bare not of intellect, but of endurance of cycles, of quiet persistence. The melody weaves through the scriptorium, slow and repetitive as a heartbeat, as the turning of seasons. It settles over your own drowsy attempts at writing, not as a judgment, but as a blanket. Your pen slows further. Your olives become even softer, more flowing, less like carved symbols, more like gentle ripples on a pond. Melays' finger moves to another character, one you recognize as Te'aim, understanding. It's the very word he painstakingly clarified for you days ago, where the ink had bled. As he hums the next line, his touch on the character is different, not analytical, almost consoling, as if the song itself were a balm applied to the faded, imperfect word. Umban barakat and be it with Macron and Burkate new. His furrows hold blessings unseen. The hum deepens, resonating in the small space. You find yourself breathing in time with it, your own shoulders sinking, the last vestiges of tension melting away like wax near a flame. The words aren't complex, but their simplicity, carried on that ancient, looping melody, bypasses your thinking mind. It speaks directly to the ache in your sitting bones, to the patience required for each ink drop, to the slow, unseen cultivation happening within these stone walls, within you. It's a lullaby for laborers, for tillers of soil and tracers of the word. Tears prickle unexpectedly at the corners of your eyes, not from sadness, but from a sudden, overwhelming sense of being profoundly seen in your humble struggle. Melays doesn't look at you. His eyes are half-closed, focused inward, or perhaps on the generations of scribes whose silent labor lives on in the ink he tends. The song continues, verse after simple verse, praising the farmer's trust in rain, his acceptance of drought, his quiet hope stored in seeds buried deep. Each verse feels like a gentle hand smoothing the rumpled fabric of your focus, of your frustration. The final note hangs in the air, a soft, resonant hum that slowly fades into the rain's whisper and the lamp's soft hiss. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's thick with the echo of the melody, with the warmth of shared, unspoken understanding. Melays doesn't pick up his pen immediately. He lets the silence hold the space. He takes a slow, deep breath, his chest rising and falling visibly. Then, without a word, without even a glance your way, he dips his reed pen. The soft sigh of nib on skin resumes. But it's different, slower, softer, infused with the quiet resonance of the song that just passed through him. You look down at your scrap parchment. Your last few olives written under the spell of the song are your softest yet almost ethereal, their edges feathered into the damp skin like mist. They aren't perfect. They might never be. But gazing at them now, bathed in the afterglow of that humble farmer's hymn, they feel sufficient, like small seeds planted in receptive ground, holding blessings unseen. You dip your pen again. The ink droplet forms, heavy and dark. You breathe out long and slow, releasing the last tight coil within. You lower the nib, kiss the skin, and plant another seed, not for perfection, but for the quiet, patient hope of growth. The rain whispers on, the lamp flickers, the reed pen sigh, and the ghost of a farmer's wisdom, carried on an old monk's low hum, lingers in the spaces between the ink. The reed pen sighs, the rain whispers. Your own breathing has settled into the slow, deep rhythm Brother Melays' song, imprinted on the air. You're tracing a bet, the second letter, beside your field of drowsy olives. It's softer, more fluid than your earlier attempts, accepting the damp paper's feathering embrace. The world is reduced to the circle of lamplight, the scent of beeswax and aged leather. the hypnotic shush scrape of pens, and the comforting weight of lentils in your belly. Stillness, deep and resonant, fills the scriptorium. Then movement. Not from you, not from Melee's. A tiny, frantic flutter at the periphery of your vision, near the halo of Melee's oil lamp. A moth. Not one of the large, silent night flyers, but a small, dusty brown creature. Its wings a blur of desperate energy. It zigzags erratically, drawn by the lamp's promise like iron to a lodestone. Its flight path is chaotic, obsessive, bumping against the hot glass chimney with tiny, frantic ticks. You pause, your pen hovering. It's just a moth, commonplace. Yet its single-minded, self-destructive dance against the light feels unervingly loud in the profound quiet. A tiny embodiment of futile yearning. You watch it batter itself, rebound, circle, and dive again towards the searing glass. Brother Melee's rhythmic sigh stops, not abruptly, but with a soft finality. He lays down his pen. He doesn't swat the moth away. He doesn't shoo it. He simply watches its desperate ballet, his face unreadable in the lamplight, his eyes reflecting the tiny, frantic shadow. The moth makes one last, determined dive. It overshoots, misses a glass, and plunges directly into the open pool of flame atop the wick. There's a minuscule FZT, a brief, bright flare, and then nothing. A wisp of smoke, smelling faintly acrid, curls up and vanishes. The small life, consumed in an instant by the very thing it sought. The silence that follows feels heavier, charged. The drumming rain outside seems louder, a counterpoint to the sudden absence of that frantic fluttering. You stare at the lamp, half expecting something. A lesson? A rebuke? A sigh for the moth's foolishness? Melee moves, slowly, deliberately. He reaches out not toward the lamp, but towards the surface of his parchment, near where he'd been working. His fingers brush the skin, searching. Then, with infinite care, he picks something up, something tiny, fragile, almost invisible against the aged leather. The moth, or what's left of it. A delicate, grayish husk, wings half crumpled and tenny singed. He holds it pinched gently between thumb and forefinger, lifting it into the lamplight. It looks incredibly fragile, insignificant, a speck of ash. He doesn't look disgusted. He looks contemplative, deeply, quietly contemplative. He turns the tiny corpse slowly, examining the intricate, now ruined patterns on its wings, the fine filaments of its legs. "See," he murmurs, his voice so low it's almost absorbed by the rain's whisper before it reaches you. It's not a question directed at you. It's an observation spoken to the fragile thing in his hand, or perhaps to the universe itself. It only knew the light. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't preach about folly or warn against obsession. He simply holds a tiny, sacrificed creature, his weathered face calm, his gaze distant yet focused on the profound simplicity of its end. The lamplight glints off the silver in his beard, off the fragile, translucent remnants of the moth's wings. After a long moment, he leans forward slightly. He doesn't discard the husk. He doesn't crush it. With the same infinite care he uses to apply correction gum, he places the tiny moth body onto the very edge of his parchment. Not on the text, on the wide, blank margin. A tiny, dark smudge against the pale skin. A minuscule monument to a vanished pursuit. He picks up his reed pen again. He dips it. The droplet forms, heavy with the humid air. He brings it not to continue his text, but to the margin near the moth. He touches the nib with breathtaking lightness to the parchment, just beside the gray smudge. He doesn't write a character. He draws a single simple shape, a tiny, perfect circle, an orb, a sun, a lamp, a symbol of the light that drew the moth to its end. He lifts the pen. The circle is clean, small, unadorned. It sits beside the moth's remains, not judging, not explaining, simply marking the encounter, acknowledging the sacrifice, honoring the single-minded drive, however doomed. He then does something unexpected. He lifts the parchment slightly and brings it close to his lips. He closes his eyes. He breathes out a soft, steady stream of air, not a puff, but a focused whisper. The breath flows over the moth's husk and the tiny, inked circle. The fragile wings tremble slightly, but hold. The ink remains undisturbed. It's a blessing, a release, a final, Gentle push for a tiny soul that knew only light. He lowers the parchment. The moth and its circle remain, a silent diorama of longing and light on the edge of the sacred text. Then, without another word, without a glance at the lamp or at you, Brother Melees returns his pen to the line he was correcting before the interruption. The soft sigh of nib on skin resumes. The rhythm is unchanged, steady, patient, but the air in the scriptorium feels different, thinner, clearer, charged with the silent echo of a tiny, absolute commitment. You look down at your own parchment, at your soft bed, the ink, the skin, the act of tracing. It feels different now. Not just a skill to learn, a path to smooth. It feels like a choice, a commitment, a turning towards a light that could consume, could illuminate, could demand everything. The moth's frantic dance, its silent end, Melees' quiet acknowledgement and blessing, it hangs in the air like incense. You dip your pen, the droplet forms. You look at it, this liquid fragment of midnight, this captured potential. It holds the reflection of the lamp's flame, tiny and perfect. You breathe out, you lower the nib, kiss the receptive skin. You trace the next stroke of the bed, slower, deeper. Not with fear of error, but with a newfound, quiet reverence for the light you are now irrevocably turning towards. The light that asks for everything and offers what? Only the work, the parchment, the next breath, the next stroke, and perhaps the grace of a simple circle drawn beside your own inevitable stumbles. Brother Melees' pen moves with its familiar, unhurried cadence. The tiny circle and its silent companion now just another part of the parchment's landscape. The rain shush is a constant backdrop, the air thick and cool. You focus on your bed, trying to channel the quiet reverence the moth's sacrifice invoked. The ink flows, you kiss the skin, but something feels subtly off. The line blurs slightly more than before, the edges feathering outwards like frost on a window pane. You lift the pen, frowning. The character looks soft, unmoored, damp. You glance at Melees. He's paused, his pen hovering over a freshly corrected word. He's not writing. He's watching. Watching a single, fat droplet of condensation gather, pearl-like, on the curved underside of the stone weight anchoring the top corner of his scroll. It swells, clinging precariously to the cool rock, refracting the lamplight into a tiny, trembling prism. Below it, perilously close, lies the edge of the precious parchment. He doesn't move, doesn't brush it away. He simply observes its slow, inevitable growth. His expression is one of detached curiosity, like a naturalist studying an unfamiliar insect. The droplet grows heavier, stretching the surface tension. Then, with silent finality, it lets go. It falls. It doesn't land on the text. It lands beside it on the wide margin, perhaps an inch from a meticulously corrected character. A perfect, dark circle blooms instantly on the thirsty skin, spreading silently outward. Not huge, but stark, a sudden, wet interruption in the field of faded ink and patient correction. Melees doesn't flinch, doesn't curse. He lets out a slow breath, a sound like wind stirring dry leaves. Ah, he murmurs. The cheiromt deepens its embrace. He sets down his pen with deliberate care. He leans closer, examining the water stain with the same focused intensity he gives a faded sada. The dark circle is still spreading slightly, its edges feathering into the parchment like gray roots. See how it drinks, he says, his voice low, almost conversational. The skin remembers it was alive. It opens its pores to the rain's kiss, even here in the heart of the word. He touches the very edge of the spreading dampness with a dry fingertip. The moisture darkens his skin instantly. A different kind of ink, unbidden. He rises, his movements fluid despite the damp chill seeming to seep from the very stones. He walks not to the door, but to a shadowed alcove near the scriptorium entrance where spare supplies are kept. You hear the soft clink of pottery. He returns carrying a shallow, unglazed clay bowl, wide and flat, filled with a pale, granular substance. Salt from the Danakil, he states, placing the bowl on the floor near his desk. The tears of a burning sea. The crystals are coarse, uneven, gleaming faintly like crushed moonstone in the lamplight. The scent is clean, sharp, oceanic. He doesn't explain. He simply kneels beside the bowl, his robes pooling around him. He picks up a small, smooth stone, a river pebble kept for wading scraps. He dips it lightly into the salt crystals, coating its underside. Then, with infinite patience, he begins to grind. Not like grinding ink, slower, more circular. A gentle, persistent rotation of the stone against the rough clay bottom of the bowl. The sound is soft, rhythmic, joining the rain's whisper. The salt crystals fracture under the stone, releasing a clean, dry scent that cuts through the damp air like a knife. A fine white powder begins to gather. He grinds for a long time. The only sounds are the SHH of stone on salt, the shush of rain, and the soft sigh of your own breath. The air near his desk gradually shifts. The clinging dampness seems to retreat slightly, repelled by the invisible cloud of desiccated sea tears rising from the bowl. The spreading water stain on his parchment slows its advance, its edges darkening as the moisture concentrates. Finally, melee stops. He lifts the stone. The bottom is coated with a fine, white paste of crushed salt. He doesn't touch the stain on the parchment yet. He picks up a small, dry scrap of undyed linen. He dips a corner into the fine salt powder, gathering a small, dry mound on the cloth. Then, with the precision of applying gold leaf, he gently taps the salt onto the very center of the damp circle on his parchment. The white powder sinks instantly into the wetness, darkening, disappearing, drinking greedily. He waits. Minutes pass. The salt works silently and visibly, wicking the moisture upwards, away from the skin into itself. The dark circle seems to stabilize. Its edges stop spreading. It looks less like an invading blot, more like a contained wound. Only then does Melee's act. He takes a fresh, dry corner of the linen cloth, with feather-like touches, like brushing dust from a butterfly's wing. He begins to dab, not rub, at the salt-darkened center of the stain. He lifts away the moisture-laden salt crystals. He repeats the process, tapping fresh, dry salt onto the damp spot, waiting, dabbing it away. Each cycle lifts more moisture. Each cycle lightens the stain. It's agonizingly slow, a battle fought grain by grain. There's no instant fix. The parchment beneath will likely always bear a faint ghost of this rainy afternoon. But the violent, spreading darkness is contained, reduced, managed. The desert remembers the flood, Melee's murmurs, not looking up from his meticulous dabbing. It stores the memory in salt. Here, he gestures with his chin toward the salt bowl. The desert lends us its memory, its dryness, its patience. He finishes the final dab. The stain is now a faint, irregular gray shadow on the margin, a ghost of the droplet's impact. It doesn't touch the sacred text. It's been held at bay. He carefully folds the salt-laden linen scrap and sets it aside. He blows a single, soft breath across the area, dispersing any stray salt crystals. The parchment looks settled, calm, scarred, but no longer bleeding damp. He looks at you, then at your own parchment where the ink feathered more than usual. Your ink listens to the rain too, he states. It grows heavy, lazy. The lines lose their spine. He gestures towards the salt bowl. The desert's memory is there. Use it, not on the ink, on the air around your work. Let it whisper dryness. You hesitate, then stand. The salt in the bowl feels cool, granular, alive under your fingers. You take a small pinch, feeling its crystalline bite. You sprinkle it sparingly into the shallow clay dish beside your inkwell that holds your pumice stone and spare nibs. A makeshift salt well. The clean, dry scent rises immediately. A tiny oasis of aridity in the damp scriptorium. You sit back down. You dip your pen. The droplet forms. It still looks heavy, but you breathe in the faint, clean scent of the Danakil salt. You lower the nib, kiss the skin. You draw the next stroke of your bed. It's still soft. The damp paper still drinks the ink hungrily, but the line feels firmer, more intentional, less like surrendering to the rain, more like writing despite it. The salt's invisible whisper holds back the tide, grain by patient grain. You plant another character, not in defiance of the current, but in quiet conversation with it, mediated by the ancient memory of a burning sea. The Danakil salt whispers its dry secrets beside your inkwell, each grain a captured tear of some ancient, burning sea, now holding the humid breath of the Chiron Bay. Your bets grow steadier, their spines firmer under the salt's subtle guardianship. The reed pens sigh, the rains shush, Brother Melese's patient scrape. They weave a cocoon of sound around the lamplit world of parchment and ink. When the Vespers bell finally tolls, its deep bronze voice echoing through the rain-slicked courtyards, your eyes are gritty, your shoulders a landscape of low aches. But your mind is strangely clear, empty yet full, filled with the angular ghosts of goo-easy characters that seem to hover behind your eyelids when you blink. Sleep, when it comes in your narrow cell, is a heavy tide. The scratchy wool blanket, the stone-cooled air, the distant murmur of monks chanting Compline. They pull you under swiftly. But the silence behind your closed eyes isn't dark. It's alive. You are standing in an immense space. Not the scriptorium, not the courtyard. A void, vast and depthless. Velvet black, yet humming with a faint, sourceless luminescence. Utterly silent, yet resonating with a profound, almost audible presence. And floating within this boundless dark, adrift like slow constellations, are the gooey Z letters. Your aleph soft and rain-blurred, drift past like smooth river stones tumbling in an invisible current. Your bets, firmer now, sail by like small angular boats. But they aren't alone. Giant luminous sadas, complex as fortress gates, slowly rotate, their intricate lines glowing with an inner fire. Serpentine mems, coiled and powerful, undulate through the dark. Delicate sads, like sprouting seeds, pulse with a gentle light. The entire alphabet, in every size and style you've glimpsed on Melese's scrolls, is here, dancing, drifting, turning in the silent, starless void. They make no sound. They simply are, occupying the darkness, defining it, giving it form through their angular grace. You reach out, not with a hand, but with a thought, a small, familiar olive. One you remember planting on rain-dampened scrapskin, drifts toward you. It hovers before your mind's eye, its soft edges glowing faintly. You trace its shape in the dark air, not with a reed, but with pure intention. The olive brightens, pulses warmly, then gently floats away, merging with a cluster of shimmering laments. A massive shin, its three arms like jagged lightning frozen mid-strike, glides ponderously close. You feel no fear, only awe at its stark, uncompromising power. As it passes, you see imperfections, a tiny wobble in one arm, a faint smudge near its base, not flaws imposed by a clumsy hand, but inherent texture, like the grain in wood, the ripple in stone. The shin carries its history within its luminous form. You drift deeper, through forests of interlocking nuns, their curved backs like rolling hills, past galaxies of tiny yods, sparkling like divine punctuation. You see characters you don't recognize, yet complex ligatures, archaic forms Melese hasn't shown you, glowing with older, deeper light. The void isn't empty. It's a cathedral built of living language. Then you sense it, a presence, vast, quiet, not threatening, but profoundly aware. You turn your awareness, not your body, and see it. Not a figure, not a face, but a focus, a concentration of the void's humming luminescence, shaped vaguely like the seated form of Brother Melese, but formed entirely of swirling, interwoven Guizi script. Lines of text flow like luminous threads through this being of light and letters. Proverbs, psalms, fragments you half recognize, constantly weaving, unweaving, correcting, refining. It's the act of copying, the essence of correction, made manifest. The 9 years, the patience, the listening distilled into this silent, luminous entity composed of the word itself. It doesn't speak. It doesn't need to. Its very presence is a lesson, a demonstration of how the letters aren't just marks on skin. They are living vessels. How the act of tracing them, correcting them, is an act of communion with something vast and ancient. How the imperfections, the wobbles, the smudges, the tremors are not enemies to be eradicated, but part of the texture, the humanity woven into the divine tapestry. As you watch a single character, A slightly faded resh detaches from the luminous entity's flowing script. It floats toward you, spinning slowly. It looks familiar, like when you saw melees painstakingly reinforce with gum Arabic days ago. It stops before you. You reach out with your awareness again. This time, you don't just trace it. You feel its history. The scribe's moment of distraction. The damp that blurred its edge. Melees' patient, bone-stylus touch. The character holds all of it within its luminous form. The error, the correction, the passage of time. It's not perfect, it's whole. The resh pulses once warmly, then drifts back towards the vast, weaving entity of light and letters, merging seamlessly back into the flowing text. The dream begins to fray at the edges. The vast void softens, losing its sharpness. The luminous letters dim, their dance slowing. The immense presence of the weaving word recedes, leaving only a profound sense of peace, of belonging to something older and larger than the walls of Dibra Libanos. You surface slowly. The first gray light of dawn seeps through the high-slit window of your cell. The rain still whispers on the stone outside. Your body is stiff, the familiar ache in your back, a dull throb. But your mind holds the afterimage of the dancing letters, the vast weaver of words, the luminous imperfection of the resh. The scent of parchment and lamp oil seems to linger in the cool cell air, mixed with a faint, clean memory of Danakil's salt. You lie still, eyes closed, not clinging to the fading dream, but letting its resonance settle into your bones. The GUI characters are no longer just shapes to be copied. They are inhabitants of a vast inner landscape. They are alive. They have history. They have texture. They float now in the darkness behind your waking eyes, waiting, not to be mastered, but to be met, to be listened to be gently, patiently corrected, like smoothing the path for a pilgrim, like tending the root of a spine, like honoring the light that consumes, and the salt that remembers the flood. The Vespers chant is a distant memory. The dawn breathes its cool, damp breath into the cell. You open your eyes. The world of stone and rain and stretched goat skin awaits. But you carry the luminous void within you now. You carry the dancing letters. You carry the silent weaver of words. And the first character you'll trace today, will be a kind of homecoming, a whispered greeting to an old friend met in the cathedral of the night. Dawn bleeds into your cell, gray and damp, carrying the soft percussion of rain on stone. The luminous void of dancing letters is faded, but its echo remains, a quiet hum beneath your ribs, a new awareness in your fingertips. The stiff ache in your back feels less like an enemy, more like an old companion whispering its presence. You rise, the rough wool of your habits scratching against skin, still holding the dream's warmth. The scent of cold stone and distant wood smoke greets you, sharp and real after the lettered cathedral of the night. In the scriptorium, the air hangs heavy with the Chiron's breath. The Danakil salt in your clay dish looks slightly clumped, dampened by its nightly vigil against the humidity. Brother Melees is already at his desk, his silhouette hunched over the lamplight, a dark island in the gray gloom. The soft sigh-scrape of his pen is the only sound besides the rain's relentless shush. He doesn't look up as you enter. The tiny circle beside the moths remains, the faint ghost of the raindrop stain on the margin. They are part of the landscape now, absorbed into the ongoing narrative of correction. You kneel at your desk. The scrap parchment from yesterday lies there, a field of soft alephs and firmer bets, blurred edges whispering of rain and salt. It feels familiar, like ground already tended. But today, Melees doesn't gesture towards the scrap. Instead, he lifts his head slightly, his gaze not on you, but on the space above your desk. He reaches beside his own work and picks up something new. It's a rectangle of parchment, but different, paler, smoother, stretched tighter over its frame. The skin is thinner, almost translucent at the edges where the lamplight catches it. It has none of the pebbled texture of your scrap skin. This is finer, younger, untouched. A subtle, clean scent of lime and careful preparation rises from it, cutting through the damp air. He places it gently on your desk. It lands with a whisper, a promise, and a threat rolled into one. The surface feels cool, impossibly smooth under your tentative touch, a blankness more profound than any scrap. This isn't for practice. This is potential. Sacred ground. Today, Melays' voice cuts through the quiet, low and resonant. You move from listening to speaking. He doesn't elaborate. He dips his pen, sighs it onto his own work, leaving the weight of his words hanging. You stare at the pristine surface. The luminous alephs from your dream seem to flicker behind your eyes, impossibly sharp against this waiting void. Your fingers feel thick, clumsy. The reed pen in your hand suddenly feels like a plowshare, too crude for this delicate earth. You dip it. The droplet of midnight ink forms, heavy, dark. You bring it trembling over the virgin skin. Where to begin? How to speak onto this silence? Then you remember the word Melays first pressed into your palm under the stars. Wisdom. Te'em gui, the word he corrected where the ink had bled. The word that pulsed in your dream, holding its history. You breathe out, not fighting, listening to the hum beneath your ribs, to the memory of the vast weaver of words, to the smooth, receptive ground beneath the pen. You don't force a starting point. You feel for it, a spot near the top left margin, a space that feels open, ready. Lower the pen, kiss. The ink flows, clean, sharp, no skitter, no feathering. The salt's whisper holds the damp at bay. The dream's clarity steadies your hand. You draw the first stroke of the taw, the opening character of Te'em. It's not perfect. There's a slight, almost imperceptible curve where it should be straight. The tremor of your own vessel. But it's clear. It lands. It holds. Dip. Breathe. Find the next anchor point. Kiss. The line emerges, its complex I-shape forming under your deliberate guidance. Slower than Melays, infinitely slower, but steady. The ink sinks into the fine skin, absorbed, welcomed. Each stroke feels like a step onto consecrated ground. You're deep in the rhythm, the world narrowed to the pen, the ink, the emerging word, when your eyes snag. Not on your own work, but on the ancient scroll section Melays has been correcting. It's unrolled nearby, weighted with stones. You're tracing the tale of your MEM, the final character of Te'em, when your gaze instinctively flicks to the same word on the ancient page for reference. It looks wrong. The Te'em on Melays' scroll. You know this word now. You felt its shape in your bones, seen its luminous counterpart in the void. But here on the ancient skin, the second character, the I, its central I is too closed, squashed, and the tail of the MEM curls inward sharply, aggressively, unlike the open, flowing shape you're attempting. It looks less like Te'em, understanding, and more like Tebibi, gathering, hoarding, a subtle, insidious shift. Your pen freezes mid-stroke. Doubt floods you. Is it the fading? A trick of the lamplight? Your own inexperience? You glance furtively at Melays. He's absorbed, tracing a character with his bone stylus, oblivious. Your heart hammers against your ribs. Do you speak? Point out a potential error in a text centuries old, handled by masters? Or stay silent, risking perpetuating a mistake? The smooth new parchment beneath your paused pen feels suddenly fragile. The word Te'em you're creating hangs incomplete, vulnerable. You remember the luminous resh from your dream, holding its error and its correction. You remember Melays saying, "Our task is not to judge the tremor, but to honor the intention beneath it." You take a shaky breath, not a shout, a whisper. "Brother Melays?" Your voice sounds thin, alien in the quiet. He doesn't startle. His hand completes the tiny correction he's making. Then he slowly lifts his head. His eyes, deep pools of reflected lamplight, meet yours. "Yes." You point a trembling finger not at the ancient scroll, but at your own nascent Te'em on the new parchment. This Te'em, understanding. You swallow. On the older scroll, the line looks constrained, and the M curls inward, like Tebe. Silence, thick. The only sound is the rain shush and the frantic drumming of your own pulse in your ears. Melays' gaze doesn't flick to the ancient scroll immediately. He looks at your word, at your incomplete Te'em. He studies it with intense focus, as if seeing it for the first time. Then, slowly, deliberately, he shifts his gaze to the ancient text, to the word you indicated. He leans closer. His eyes narrow. tracing the faded lines you question. He doesn't speak for a long moment. He picks up his bone stylus not to correct, but to hover over the suspect characters, feeling their texture, their depth. He examines the ink flow, the pressure points, the slight discolorations around the shapes. Finally, he sits back. He looks at you, not with anger, not with surprise, with a profound, quiet intensity that makes your breath catch. A slow nod, deep, respectful. Your eyes are opening, he says, his voice a low rumble of approval. You see beyond the ink. You see the shape of the intention and where it may have faltered. He gestures to the ancient scroll. This is a subtle corruption, not malice, fatigue perhaps, or a moment where the scribe's understanding wavered. He touches the cramped eye. He closed the eye of wisdom. He made understanding small, contained. His finger moves to the aggressively curled MEM. He gathered it inward, hoarded it, instead of letting it flow. He looks back at your emerging ta'im on the new parchment. You, he says, the word carrying immense weight, are opening the eye. You are letting the MEM flow outward. You are speaking ta'im truly. He pauses. Now finish speaking it. He turns back to his own work, picking up his stylus. He doesn't immediately correct the ancient error. He leaves it, acknowledged, sing, waiting for its own gentle correction in time. Your hand trembles, but differently now, not with fear, with a surge of something warm and potent. Validation, purpose. You look down at your ta'im. The MEM is half-formed. You dip your pen. The droplet hangs, dark and full of potential. You breathe out, releasing the last vestige of doubt. You find the anchor point. You lower the nib, kiss. You draw the final stroke of the MEM, letting it flow outward, open, generous. True, the completed ta'im sits on the pristine skin. Your first word, not perfect, but clear, open, flowing, spoken onto silence with open eyes. The luminous letters in your dream hum their approval. The path, you understand, isn't just about smoothing the old. It's about speaking the true word, here now, onto the waiting skin of the present. One patient, trembling stroke at a time. The completed ta'im stares back at you from the fine new skin. Understanding. It's open and it's flowing. They feel less like ink, more like a declaration etched onto the silence. Brother Mele's quiet approval still hums in your chest, warm as Sister Azeb Shiro. But across the desk, the ancient scroll lies open. It's cramped, hoarding TBB, a dark whisper of corrupted wisdom. It demands more than seeing. It demands action. Mele's doesn't instruct. He simply slides a small, shallow dish across the worn wood toward you. Inside rest the familiar tools. The needle-sharp bone stylus, the viscous gum Arabic mixture, and a tiny mound of fine, pale dust, powdered pumice stone. The implements of correction. They look different now. Less like surgical tools, more like keys. Keys to a prison holding back the true word. Your throat tightens. The pristine parchment beneath your ta'im feels suddenly distant. Your focus narrows to the ancient scroll, to that single, subtly poisoned word. The weight of centuries presses down. Your fingers feel numb as you pick up the bone stylus. It's cool, smooth, and possibly light, yet heavy with purpose. You dip its needle tip into the gum Arabic, gathering a minuscule bead of the clear, sticky resin. Begin where the intention faltered, Mele's murmurs. His own stylus hovering over a different faded character. His voice is low, a steady current beneath your rising tide of apprehension. Not with anger, with compassion. You are not erasing a mistake. You are freeing the trapped meaning. You lean over the ancient tebib, the cramped, and seems to huddle on the skin. Its central eye squeezed shut. The curled MEM looks defensive, possessive. You take a slow breath, trying to quiet the frantic drumming in your ears. Compassion, freeing the trapped meaning. You bring the gum-laden stylus tip down, not onto the ink, but onto the parchment beside the cramped eye of the eye. You apply the faintest pressure, a tiny dot of clear gum blooms on the pale margin. Practice, testing a touch. The parchment accepts it silently. Another breath, deeper. You move the stylus tip to the very edge of the cramped eye's eye, where the ink line pinches inward unnaturally. You don't stab. You caress. With microscopic precision, you apply a minuscule droplet of gum along the inner curve of the pinch line. It sinks in, invisible except for a slight darkening where it touches the ancient ink. It's not covering. It's lubricating the trapped shape. You wait. The gum Arabic needs moments to penetrate, to loosen the grip of centuries on the misformed intention. Your eyes flick to Mele's. He's working on his own correction. His movements a slow, rhythmic dance. Touch, wait, tap, breathe. His calm is an anchor. You return to the eye. The gum has done its subtle work. Now with the very tip of the bone stylus, dry clean, you apply the gentlest, most focused pressure outward, away from the cramped center. It's less like scraping, more like persuading. You coax the pinched ink line millimeter by agonizing millimeter, back towards its intended open curve. The ancient ink, softened by the gum, yields grudgingly. A tiny sliver of pale parchment skin emerges where the line once pinched shut. The eye of wisdom begins to open. Sweat beads on your upper lip. Your hand trembles, but the stylus, guided by fierce concentration, holds its course. You repeat the process on the other side of the eye, easing the constraint. It's painstaking, a battle fought in silence on a microscopic battlefield. Each fractional movement feels monumental. You become aware of your own heartbeat, a slow, heavy thud, counting the passage of focus time. Finally, the eye breathes. Its central space is open, clear. It no longer looks constrained. It looks receptive. You release a breath you didn't know you were holding. The cramped TBB is halfway to becoming Te'aim. Now the curled Emiem. Its tail whips inward sharply, a gesture of possession. You dip the stylus into the gum Arabic again. This time, you apply tiny dots along the outer curve of the aggressive tail, where it curls unnaturally inward. Gum Arabic, the tears of the desert, sinks into the parchment beside the ink. You wait again, feeling the invisible softening. Then, with the dry stylus tip, you begin the delicate work of uncurling, applying gentle, persistent pressure outward, persuading the ink line to relax its defensive coil, to extend, to flow outward as it was meant to. The ancient ink resists, stubborn. You persist. Touch, wait, persuade, breathe. It takes longer than mine. The curl is deep set and grained, but slowly, grain by grain of ancient carbon suspended in gum, the tail begins to yield. It unfurls, like a clenched fist slowly opening. The defense of aggression melts away, replaced by a sense of release, of offering. The MEM flows. You sit back. Your hand aches. Your eyes burn. But before you, the word is transformed. Te'aim. Understanding. The eye is open. The flow is generous. The trapped meaning is freed. It's not pristine. The parchment bears the ghost of the old constraint. Faint stress marks where the ink was moved. A subtle difference in sheen where the gum Arabic worked its magic. It's a scar, but a healed one. A testament to correction, not erasure. You reach for the pumice dust, not the coarse powder used for smoothing reed pens, but the finest, flour-like sediment settled at the bottom of the dish. You take a tiny pinch between thumb and forefinger. Holding your breath, you gently dust it over the corrected area. The pale powder settles like the first snow, adhering to the slightly tacky gum Arabic still present. It blends the moved ink with the surrounding parchment, muting the visual disruption of the correction. It seals the act. It whispers, done. You blow a soft, steady breath across the dusted area. The excess pumice lifts and vanishes. What remains is the word Te'aim, clear, open, flowing. Not new, not untouched, but true, restored. You look up. Brother Mele's is watching, not your work, you. His eyes hold a depth of quiet satisfaction that needs no words. He gives the slightest nod, an acknowledgement deeper than praise. He gestures not to the corrected word, but to the tools before you. The bone stylus, the gum, the pumice dust. Now, he says, his voice a low rumble resonating in your weary bones. You know how to mend the world one whispered letter at a time. He turns back to his own scroll, the soft sigh-scrape of his pen resumes, weaving its own thread into the vast, patient tapestry of correction. You look down at your hands. They tremble slightly, stained with fine pumice dust and the faintest residue of ancient ink. tools of restoration, vessels of compassion, capable of freeing trapped light, one infinitesimal, patient touch at a time. The weight of the ancient scroll feels different now, not a burden, but a shared responsibility, a conversation across centuries whispered in ink, answered with gum Arabic, and sealed with the dust of patient stone. The bone stylus rests beside the dusted Ta'im, its tiny tip still bearing the ghosts of gum Arabic and ancient ink. Your fingers thrum with the echo of persuasion, the delicate violence of uncurling a meaning frozen centuries ago. Brother Mele's words, mend the world one whispered letter at a time, vibrate in your chest, a profound and terrifying responsibility settling onto shoulders already aching from stillness. He gestures not back to your triumph on the ancient scroll, nor to your fledgling Ta'im on the new skin. He points to the vast, partially unrolled bulk of the Proverbs manuscript dominating his desk. Its beginning near his elbow is darkened by years of handling, the margins faintly scored. Its middle section, where he labors, is a patchwork of subtle corrections, a landscape of quiet battles won. Its end is still tightly furled, bound with a simple leather cord, a sealed promise. He who guards his mouth preserves his life, Mele's murmurs, tracing a freshly corrected line near the furled edge. But he who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. He taps the furled section. The end waits, wisdom unrestrained, unknowing when to speak and when the work itself must speak. He looks at you, his eyes holding a challenge softer than steel, harder than parchment. Your hand knows the whisper. Your eyes see the trapped light. Now guard your mouth. Open your hand. Write this. He slides a small, tightly folded scrap of parchment across the desk. Not a reference, an assignment. You unfold it with trembling fingers. On it in Mele's own sharp, uncompromising hand is a single line of Guizi. Wisdom cries aloud in the street. In the market she raises her voice. But in many words, transgression is not lacking. Your first independent transcription. Not a single word, but a line. A complex weave of characters, rhythms, and profound meaning about wisdom's public cry and the peril of excessive speech. On the new skin, the pristine, terrifyingly smooth rectangle waiting beside your half-formed aim. The air thickens. The lamp's flame seems to gutter. The weight of the bone stylus's triumph vanishes, replaced by the crushing vulnerability of the blank space. You pick up your reed pen. It feels alien again, too light, too blunt. You dip it. The ink droplet swells, dark and accusatory. Where to begin? How to capture wisdom's cry? How to balance the characters so the warning against excess doesn't itself become excessive? You bring the nib over the virgin skin. Your hand shakes, not the fine tremor of focus, but a visible, betraying quiver. The droplet wobbles precariously. You freeze. Panic, cold, and familiar licks up your spine. Guard your mouth. Open your hand. Mele's instruction echoes, but your hand feels locked. A gate rusted shut. The reed remembers the grindstone. Mele's voice cuts through your paralysis, calm as deep water. He's not looking at you. He's smoothing a tiny ridge on his parchment with a polished agate burnisher. Remember its weight, its patience. Let that weight steady your hand, not your fear. You close your eyes, not to escape, but to descend. You reach past the fluttering panic, past the trembling muscles. You reach for the memory deep in your bones. The pre-dawn dark of the ink hut, the cool, gritty resistance of the soot in the giant mortar, the solid, grounding heft of the river stone in your hands. Thump, scrape, The rhythm pulses through you, slow, deliberate, immense. You feel the weight of a stone, the push through your legs, the surrender to the earth's pull. You feel the ink being born from midnight and patience. You open your eyes. The reed pen is still in your hand. It still trembles, but now the tremor feels contained, anchored by the remembered weight of the stone. You breathe in, drawing the scent of cold soot, acacia gum, and patient labor into your lungs. You breathe out, releasing the frantic edge of fear. The ink droplet steadies. You find the starting point, not by force, but by feeling. Top left, a space receptive to the opening cry. You lower the pen. Kiss. The ink flows. The first character, A with diaresis, B, A with diaresis, B wisdom, begins to take shape. It's not Melaze's razor precision. It carries your tremor, a slight waver in the vertical stroke, a softer curve than intended. But it's present. It lands. It speaks. The grindstone's memory holds your hand. Dip. Breathe. Remember the stone. Find the next anchor. Kiss. Cough aloud. The characters flow. Slowly. Deliberately. The tremor is woven into the lines, not as error, but as texture. The human hand shaping the divine utterance. The grindstone's rhythm beats beneath each stroke. Thump, scrape, thump, scrape, translating in sigh, kiss, kiss. You reach the pivotal point. But in many words, transgression is not lacking. The warning, the line itself becomes a tightrope. How to write about the danger of excess without becoming excessive. How to make the characters embody restraint. You pause. The ink droplet hangs. You feel the pressure to rush, to fill the silence, to overwrite. Guard your mouth. You breathe deeply into the knot of tension between your shoulder blades. You remember the sesame oil's warmth. Melaze's fingers guiding your breath into the pain. You don't push the pen. You let the weight of the grindstone memory guide the descent. Kiss. The characters for Kubzu Khaled, many words, emerge. You deliberately make them tighter? No. Cleaner. Sharper angles. Less flourish. More economy. The ink flows sparingly. Each stroke essential. Nothing wasted. The characters aren't small. They are precise. They embody the warning they carry. Then the final phrase. Estia with diaresis dier. Transgression is not lacking. The sad transgression. You form it deliberately. Its angular lines hinting at broken boundaries. The et, a contained, almost box character. The final MEM, not flowing out generously like in Te'aim, but closed, contained, signifying lack. You hold the reed lighter, letting lessing flow, creating slightly thinner, more austere lines. The words look lean, unadorned, powerful in their restraint. The final stroke is placed. The line is complete. Your Te'aim sits beside it, a quieter companion. You sit back. Exhaustion washes over you, deep and bone heavy. Your hand throbs. Your eyes sting. The reed pen trembles on the desk. You look at your work. Wisdom's cry is there, bearing the tremor of your hand, the softness learned in rain and dream. The warning against excess is there, etched with deliberate economy. It's not perfect, far from it, but it's yours. Your first spoken sentence onto the sacred skin. Whispered, not shouted. Guided by the weight of the grindstone, the memory of the dream letters, and the quiet imperative to mend the world one careful character at a time. Melaze rises. He doesn't come to inspect. He walks to the furled end of the great proverb scroll. He places a hand lightly on the leather binding. The end waits, he repeats, his voice softer now. But the beginning is always now. Spoken onto silence, whispered onto skin. He looks at your line, then at you. A single nod, deep as the foundation stone of the monastery. You have opened your hand. He returns to his desk. The soft sigh-scrape resumes. The rain whispers its endless shush. The lamp flickers. And your line, your imperfect, tremulous, carefully guarded utterance, rests on the fine new skin. A beginning, a mended fragment of the world. Whispered onto silence, one breath, one kiss, one anchored stroke at a time. The rhythm feels earned. The sigh-kiss sigh of your pen on the new skin, shaping wisdom's cry and its warning against excess, has settled into your muscles like a familiar chant. The damp Kairam air, held at bay by the Danakil salt's whispered memory of desert, feels like an ally now, forgiving the slight tremor in your lines. You dip the pen, breathe out, kiss the skin, tracing a tale of a resh, slow, deliberate, anchored by the grindstone's ghostly weight in your bones. The ink flows dark and sure. Then the world cracks. It's not a sound at first. It's a sensation. A sudden, sharp snap beneath your fingertip resting on the parchment's edge. You flinch, jerking your hand back. A hair-thin fissure has appeared in the fine skin, running from the edge towards your freshly inked resh. Before your eyes, the crack lengthens minutely, silently. ice spreading under pressure. The parchment, stretched drum-tight over its frame just days ago, is shrinking, curling, pulling away from the wooden edges with a faint, tortured groan. Simultaneously, a new force slams into the scriptorium. Not rain, wind, but not the cool, damp breath of the Chirant. This is hot, blast furnace hot, dry as ancient bones. It roars through the high window slit like an invading army, carrying the scent of dust, scorched earth, and something primal. The metallic tang of panic, the harmattan, the desert wind. The long rains have broken. The dry season has arrived with a vengeance. The change is instantaneous, violent. The clinging humidity vanishes, sucked out by the greedy, scorching air. Your lips chap instantly. Your eyes feel gritty, blinking against the sudden dust haze swirling in the lamplight. The parchment beneath your hand transforms. The cool, receptive surface turns parched, brittle. Your half-finished resh, the wet ink you just kissed onto the skin, it doesn't sink in. It sits on top, beating, darkening too fast, far too fast. You stare horrified. Before you can react, the tip of your sleeve, brushing the desk as you recoil from a cracking skin, grazes the tail of the resh. It's not smear, it's a disaster. The ink, barely settled, lifts clean off the desiccated skin like soot. It leaves behind a ragged, mocking ghost of the character and a dark smudge on your sleeve. The precious word is ruined, erased by a whisper of fabric and the desert's cruel breath. Across the room, Brother Melees moves with startling speed, not panic, but the decisive action of long experience. He slams shut the heavy wooden shutter over the window slit, cutting off the invading furnace blast. The roar lessens, but the heat remains, thickening the air, pressing down. The lamplight flickers wildly in the sudden gloom. He doesn't look at your ruined resh. His eyes are fixed on his own work, on a freshly corrected word where the gum Arabic still glistened. Wet. The desert reclaims its tears, he rasps, his voice sounding stripped, raw by the dry air. He snatches up a clean scrap of linen, not to dab, to cover. He lays it gently over his damp correction, shielding it from the desiccating air. Quickly, cover wet ink, every drop. You fumble, numb with shock. The heat is oppressive, stealing your breath. You grab a scrap of undyed linen mimicking him, laying it over your ruined resh, a shroud for a stillborn word. But it's too late. The damage is done. Melees is already at the ink-making alcove. You follow. The stone floor burning your bare feet even through the brief journey. He rummages not for soot or gum, but for a small, dark honey jar and a twist of dried acacia pods. Water evaporates like a sinner's promise under this wind, he mutters. His movements sharp, economical. He scoops a dollop of thick amber honey into your personal inkwell, then crumbles a pinch of the dried acacia gum into it. He adds only a drop of water, precious, sparse. He seizes a clean reed stalk and stirs frantically, not the slow, patient grind of midnight, but a rapid, whipping motion. The ink transforms before your eyes. It thickens, deepens, becomes viscous, syrupy. It clings to the stirring reed like dark treacle. Slower strokes, he commands, thrusting the modified inkwell at you. His eyes scan your desk, your cracked parchment. Smaller sections. Cover each word as you finish. The desert gives no second chances. You stumble back to your desk. The heat is a physical weight. Sweat beads on your forehead instantly, threatening to drip onto the precious, brittle skin. You dip your reed into the new ink. It's heavy, sticky. The droplet forms slowly, reluctantly. You bring it over the cracked parchment. Where to begin? The ruined resh mocks you. You bypass it, find a fresh spot, high up, away from the worst fissures. You lower the pen, kiss. The thick ink flows sluggishly. You draw the first stroke of a new character. It's agonizingly slow. You have to pull the ink, coax it onto the parched surface. It doesn't feather. It sits heavily, drying even as you lift the pen. It's crude, thick, lacking the grace of your rain-softened lines. But it holds. You grab another linen scrap, cover the crude. He immediately. Sweat stings your eyes. You wipe it furiously with your sleeve, leaving a damp smear. Focus. Dip. The thick ink. Find the next anchor point. Kiss. Pull. Another thick, inelegant stroke. Cover it. Repeat. It's not writing. It's trench warfare. Every character is a battle 1 inch by inch against the desiccating wind sneaking through cracks of the shutter, against the heat leaching moisture from your skin, from the ink, from the very parchment. The grindstone's memory is useless here. This demands speed married to agonizing slowness, force applied with feather-light precision. You learn the viscosity of the honeyed ink, the exact moment it sets on the skin. Seconds, not minutes. You learn to shield your work with your body, casting a shadow over the tiny patch you're working on. You learn to breathe shallowly, lest your exhale disturb the drying ink. Melee's works the same way, his usual unhurried sighs gone, replaced by short, sharp breaths, rapid dips of the pen, swift covering motions. His brow is furrowed not in deep concentration, but in fierce, focused defense against the elements. The scriptorium is silent except for the muffled roar of the wind outside, the frantic scrape of pens, and the rustle of linen being laid and lifted. You glance at the ruined resh, covered by its shroud, a casualty of the sudden shift, a lesson etched in loss. In the harmattan, there is no time for hesitation, no forgiveness for wet ink exposed. Wisdom, under the desert sun, isn't about patient unfolding. It's about swift, decisive action. It's about shielding the vulnerable word. It's about adapting the ink, changing the rhythm, accepting the crude, thick lines as the price of survival. You dip again. The honeyed ink clings. The desert wind howls its challenge against the shutters. You lower the nib, kiss the parched skin, pull the thick, resistant ink into the shape of survival. Cover it. Fight for the next breath, the next word. The war against dust and drying has begun, and the only victory lies in the next character shielded in time. The linen shroud over your ruined resh feels like a burial mound. The desert wind hammers the shuttered window, a relentless fist demanding entry. Heat radiates from the stones, thick and metallic. Every breath scrapes your throat. Dust motes fine as ground bone swirl in the lamplight's cone, settling on your eyelashes, the rim of your inkwell, the desiccated skin of your parchment. Your knuckles are white around the reed pen slick with honey-thickened ink. Survival, not grace, is the order of the day. You dip. The modified ink clings heavy as tar. You find a sliver of intact parchment near the top, far from the spiderweb crack creeping inward. Lower the nib. Kiss. The parchment, bone dry and greedy, sucks at the viscous ink. You pull. Slow. Deliberate. The thick ink drags, forming a crude, dark sausage of a line. The base of heat. You snatch a linen scrap, slap it over the wet ink like a battlefield dressing. Sweat drips from your brow onto the linen shield. Too close. You flinch back, wiping your face with a dusty forearm. Across the desk, Brother Melee's moves with the grim efficiency of a veteran under siege. His reed pen dart stabs, lifts, cover, repeat. No sigh, just the sharp scritch of thick ink on resistant skin, punctuated by the rustle of linen. His jaw is set, the lines around his eyes deep trenches in the lamplight. He's not correcting faded wisdom. He's fortifying text against annihilation. Smaller bites, he rasps, not looking up, laying linen over a freshly inked cluster of characters. One character. Cover. Breathe. Next. His voice is sandpaper on stone. You obey. Dip. Find a tiny patch of unblemished skin beside the covered ink. Kiss. Pull. A vertical stroke. Thicker. Blunter than you'd ever make in the damp. Cover. Sweat stings your eyes. The air is oven dry. Your cracked parchment groans softly, the fissure widening a hair. Ignore it. Protect the next word. You work character by shielded character, building a fragile archipelago of thick, inelegant script on the brittle sea of skin. It's brutal, artless. Each stroke feels like carving stone with a blunt chisel. The honey in the ink traps dust motes that land before the linen shield can descend, leaving tiny, gritty constellations trapped in the drying blackness. Imperfection embedded in survival. Suddenly, Melee stops. He stares not at his work, but at the cracks snaking across your parchment. It's reached the edge of your covered heat, threatening the next untouched patch you targeted. He sets down his pen, picks up his bone stylus. Not for correction, for reconnaissance. He leans over your desk, his shadow falling across the fissure. He brings the needle tip down, not on the crack, but beside it. He traces its path with infinite slowness, feeling the texture, the depth, the tension in the skin with the stylus's sensitive point. His face is unreadable, absorbed. "See how it breathes," he murmurs, the stylus tip hovering where the crack widest. The desert wind, it didn't just crack the skin, it made it sing. He taps the stylus lightly beside the fissure. A faint, dry thrum resonates through the taut parchment frame. A different kind of vessel now, holding the word under tension. He straightens, his gaze sweeping your crude, shielded characters. "Your ink," he states, fights the song. It shouts where the skin whispers. He gestures towards the jar of viscous, honey dark ink. Too heavy, too loud for the new voice. He walks to the ink alcove. You follow, the heat pressing down. He rummages past the honey, past the acacia gum. He pulls out a small, dark vial you've never seen, stoppered with wax. "Fig sap," he says, breaking the seal. The scent is faintly sweet, green resinous. He adds only 3 drops to your thickened ink. He stirs with a clean reed, not the frantic whip of before, but a slow, deliberate fold. The ink transforms. It remains dark, viscous, but gains a subtle sheen, a slight elasticity. It flows off the reed more cleanly, forming a droplet that holds its shape but yields easier. "Now," he instructs, handing you the modified inkwell. "Listen to the crack. Write with its tension, not against it. Lighter touch, faster cover." The sap remembers flexibility. You return to the front line. The crack hums faintly under your fingertip. You dip the reed into the sap-modified ink. The droplet forms, still dark, still heavy, but smoother. You find a tiny island of skin between 2 branches of the fissure. High-tension ground. You lower the nib. Kiss. The ink flows, not a sluggish pull, but a controlled surrender. You draw a simple dotted seed. Quick, precise. You cover it instantly with linen. The ink holds. The parchment doesn't groan. Next character. You choose a spot where the crack runs parallel to the intended stroke. You kiss the skin. You draw the line. A lamid. Let your stroke flow along the tension line, not across it. The ink settles cleanly. Cover. The crack doesn't widen. It accepts the ink like a path accepts a traveler. Dip. Breathe. Listen. Find the receptive patch near the crack, not in defiance, but in conversation. Kiss. Draw. Cover. The fig sap's memory of green life allows the ink to bridge the tension, to adhere where the honey shout failed. Your characters remain thick, utilitarian, born of desert necessity, but they are no longer crude assaults. They are adaptations, settlements built on fault lines. Melees watches your next few characters. The grim set of his jaw softens just slightly. He dips his own pen into his inkwell, now likely modified similarly. He returns to his work. The scritch is still there, but the rhythm has shifted. Less frantic defense, more focused negotiation with the harsh new reality. The wind howls its frustration against the shutters. Dust filters down. The heat is still oppressive, but the scriptorium silence is no longer brittle with panic. It's the silence of a siege endured, of wisdom learning a new dialect, spoken in thick ink on singing skin, under the unblinking eye of the desert sun. You dip again. The ink, tempered by fig sap's memory of resilience, forms a droplet. You find your place on the tension map of your parchment. Kiss. The word, change but unbroken, takes another breath in the furnace air. The fig sap's green memory flows through the ink, letting it bridge the parchment's tension cracks like roots finding fissures in bedrock. Kiss. Pull. Cover. The rhythm is mechanical now, a survival cadence against the harmattan's scorching breath. Sweat rivers carve paths through the dust on your temples. Your knees, locked in the scribe's perpetual half-kneel on the stone floor, have passed numbness into a deep, resonant throb. But it's your back that screams, that old, familiar knot beneath your spine. The one eased by sesame oil and lentil warmth has returned not as a murmur, but as a clenched fist of white-hot iron. It radiates down your left leg, a jagged lightning bolt of pain with every micro-shift to cover character or reach for the inkwell. You finish a thick, sap-stubborn shin. Linen down, shielded, a gasp escapes you as you straighten a fraction. The movement ignites the knot. Fire lances from sacrum to heel. Your vision grays at the edges. The reed pen clatters from spasming fingers, rolling towards the treacherous crack in your parchment. You lunge instinctively, back shrieking in protest, grabbing the pen before it touches the fragile edge. You collapse forward onto your elbows, forehead pressing against the blessedly cool stone of the desktop, breathing ragged puffs of dust-laden air. The grindstone's anchoring weight is gone. Only the desert's vice remains, crushing your spine. Your bones remember. Melee's voice cuts through the haze of pain. He's beside you, not crouching, but kneeling with the fluid ease of decades worn into his joints. His hand, broad and dry as sunbaked clay, rests lightly between your shoulder blades, not pressing, simply present. The heat of his palm seeps through your rough tunic, a counterpoint to the internal fire. Not just a stillness, he continues, his voice low, resonant in the muffled roar beyond the shutters. They remember the fall, the impact, the way the earth rose up to meet you on the Zeben past 9 winters past. His words unlock the memory. A misstep on icy scree, the sickening drop onto rock, the weeks of agony carried silently back to the monastery. Your spine had been a scribe's tool even then, young and untested. It recorded the impact in fractured whispers. The parchment cracks under the desert's thirst, he murmurs, his thumb finding the specific, burning locus of the knot with uncanny precision. Our bodies crack under the weight of the word we carry, the burden of stillness, the years of bending towards the light. His touch isn't massage, it's mapping, tracing the fault lines of old trauma embedded in muscle and bone, just as his stylus traced the faded errors in ink. You fight it, he observes, like fighting the crack, like fighting the harmattan. It only tightens a knot. He removes his hand. The heat lingers. He picks up your discarded reed pen, then reaches for the heavy clay jar holding your fig sap ink. It's nearly full, glazed and cool. He places it firmly in your hands. Feel its weight, he instructs. Not the jar, the memory inside. You cradle the cool clay. It's substantial, grounding. You close your eyes, seeking past the pain, past the desert's assault. You reach for the pre-dawn ink hut, the pre-dawn chill, the rhythmic thump scrape of the river stone in the mortar, the deep, patient weight of it in your hands, pushing through you, not just with you. The ink born from midnight and patience. Let that weight sink, Melee's whispers. Not onto your spine, through it, into the earth beneath the stone floor. Let the earth hold the memory of the fall. You only hold the word. You breathe in dust and fig resin. You imagine the grindstone's weight in your hands again, not lifting it, surrendering to its downward pull, letting its mass flow down your arms, through your tormented spine, down your legs, into the bedrock of Debra Libanos itself. Thump. You exhale, visualizing the knot unclenching grain by grain under the relentless, patient pressure. Scrape. The fire in your leg lessens, not extinguished, but banked, contained. Melee's watches, his eyes reflecting the lamplight dancing on dust motes. The body is the first parchment, he says, his voice regaining its unhurried cadence despite the furnace air. It holds every error, every tremor, every fall. Our work isn't to erase those marks. It's to correct their grip on the present, to listen to their story, and then gently, gently persuade them to release their hold on the living text. He places a small, familiar jar beside the ink jar, sesame oil. Use the ink's weight, then use the oil's warmth. Tend this vessel. It carries more than bones. It carries the hand that mends a world. You set the ink jar down. The deep, resonant ache remains, but the sharp, imprisoning fire has eased. You dip your fingers into the cool sesame oil, breathing in its nutty earthiness. You reach back, finding the mapped knot. This time you don't press against it. You press with the remembered weight of the grindstone flowing downward. You breathe into the dense tissue, not fighting, but softening the ground around the root of the old injury. The oil's warm spreads, a balm seeping into the fault lines. The harmattan howls. Dust drifts. Your parchment crackles softly. You pick up the reed pen, dip it into the fig sap ink. The droplet forms, dark and resilient. Your back is a landscape of quiet negotiation now, not war. You find a tiny island of intact skin near the crack. Kiss. You pull the ink into a MEM, letting it flow outward. Cover. The grindstones wait. Hold your spine. The desert wind sings in the cracks. The word, carried in a mending vessel, endures. The harmattan's fist pounds the shuttered window, relentless. Dust motes, stirred by your last careful covering of its solder, dance like mad prophets in the lamplight before settling onto linen shields and parched skin. The grindstones wait. Hold your spine, a deep anchor against the desert's pulling tide. Your pen moves. Dip, kiss, pull, cover. Thick sap Brazilian ink. Brittle parchment humming under tension. Survival etched in dark, utilitarian strokes. Then a new sound. Not wind, not pen. A soft, questioning coo. It filters through the shutter's cracks, fragile against the furnace roar. You pause. Linen scrap hovering over a freshly shielded nun. Brother Melese's head lifts fractionally, his stylus freezing mid-correction. Another coo, closer, plaintive. A shadow flickers across the high, dust-coated rafters. Wings beat, not the frantic flutter of the moth, but weary, hopeful pulses. A small, ash-gray dove circles once, twice, its feathers ruffled, eyes bright with exhaustion. It lands on a beam directly above Melese's desk, sending a tiny cascade of dust onto the covered scroll below. It doesn't startle. It tucks its head, puffing feathers against the pervasive grit. A small island of weary life in the scriptorium's defensive gloom. Melese doesn't shoo it. He watches. His gaze shifts from the dove to the dust, settling on the linen covering his work. He sees not contamination, but texture. A tiny, gray constellation descending onto the shielded word. A slow breath escapes him. Less a sigh, more a release. Even the desert seeks sanctuary, he murmurs, his voice raspy, but devoid of anger. See how it nests in the dust we fight? He carefully lifts the corner of the linen shield over his work, not exposing the ink, just peeking beneath. The dove's dust has settled on the covering cloth, not the sacred text. He lets the linen fall back, a silent acceptance, a shared raft. The dove coos again, a soft, rhythmic sound that seems to sync with your own heartbeat, still slowed by the grindstone's remembered weight. It begins to preen, methodically smoothing wind-tangled feathers, its tiny beak working with focused care. It's not fleeing the storm. It's settling within it, making a nest of dust and shadow. You look down at your own work. Dust speckles the linen shroud over your crude characters. You see it not as grit to curse, but as tiny, mineral witnesses settling onto the struggle. The knot in your back, held deep by sesame oil and surrendered weight, pulses softly. Not pain now, a reminder, a grounding. Kiss. You dip the pen. The fig sap ink beads darkly. You find a sliver of parchment near the main crack. High tension ground. Lower the nib. Kiss. Pull. A thick, resilient heat. Cover. Dust motes drift onto the fresh linen. You leave them. The dove shuffles on its beam, tucking its head deeper. It's incubating. Not an egg, but a presence. A quiet defiance against the howling void outside. Incubation. Melese's voice is a low rumble, blending with the dove's coo and the wind's drone. He's watching the bird, but his words feel directed inward, or perhaps at you, not the stillness of waiting. The active stillness of holding, protecting the unseen spark within storm. He gestures vaguely, not toward the dove, but encompassing the scriptorium, the covered scrolls, your own shielded work, the ache held deep in your spine. The word incubates in the cracked vessel. Wisdom in the dust nest. Patience. His eyes meet yours, reflecting the weary determination of the dove in the clenched bone. You understand. The fight isn't over. The harmattan still rages. The parchment might yet shatter. Your back might scream again, but the frantic scritch of defense has shifted. Like the dove preening in the gloom, like Melese accepting the dust, like your own spine holding the deep weight. It's about creating a pocket of fierce, focused stillness within the maelstrom, incubating the word, not perfectly, not elegantly, but tenaciously, holding the fragile potential safe while the desert screams its fury outside. You dip again. The ink, thickened by fig sap and dust motes, forms its droplet. You find your place, near the crack, on the singing skin. Kiss. You pull the thick line, a lamed reaching upwards. You cover it. Dust settles on the linen. The dove coos softly above. Brother Mele's pen resumes its slow, shielded dance. The desert wind howls, but within the stone walls, within the shielded ink, within the held ache and the dust nest on the beam, something profound and quiet is being guarded, nurtured, incubated. One covered character, one surrendered breath, one feather smoothed at a time. The dove's soft cooing has woven itself into the scriptorium silence, a thread of life spun through the harmattan's roar. Dust motes drift like lazy stars above Brother Mele's head as he leans over the final section of the proverb scroll. The lamp's flame burns low, its light pooling gold on the skin where 9 years of patient correction converge. You watch his hand, the hand that taught you the grindstone's weight, the stylus's persuasion, the reed's kiss. Hover, not trembling, poised, above the last character needing clarity. A faded coph in the phrase, the heart of the wise inclines to the right. The ink is thin here, washed pale by time or damp, its intention blurred. He doesn't reach for the bone stylus or gum. He dips his reed pen into the fig sap ink, the desert-forged ink born of honey, sap, and necessity. The droplet forms, heavy with the memory of midnight and the resilience of greenwood. He brings it down, not a correction, a confirmation, a single, deliberate kiss onto the heart of the faded coph. The thick, dark ink settles onto the ancient, thirsty skin, not obscuring the old line, but embracing it, defining its intention, anchoring it in the present. It's not an erasure. It's a benediction. He lifts the pen. The final mark is made. 9 years exhale in the space between one heartbeat and the next. The sigh is almost audible. The release of immense, patient tension held across decades of dawns, rains, dust storms, and aching bones. The scroll lies complete. A map of wisdom traversed. Error by gentle error. Stroke by surrendered stroke. Mele's doesn't speak. He lays down the reed pen. His hands, gnarled as ancient olive roots, move with ceremonial slowness. He takes the smooth river stones, weighting the corners, and sets them aside. Their duty done. He carefully rolls the vast expanse of corrected skin. The parchment whispers a dry song of release as it furls upon itself, protecting the illuminated darkness within. He ties it with a simple strip of softened leather, looping it once, twice, securing the 9-year journey with a humble knot. He rises. The movement is fluid, yet carries the immense gravity of completion. He cradles the bound scroll not like an object, but like a sleeping child. The dove above watches silent now. You follow him through the scriptorium door, into the courtyard's furnace blast. The harmattan snatches at your robes, hot and greedy, but Mele's walks as if through still water. The door to the cool, dark manuscript chamber stands open, a mouth breathing out the scent of cedar, salt, and centuries. Inside, shadows pool deep. Stone shelves hold other slumbering words, bound and waiting. Mele's approaches an empty niche. He pauses. He lifts the scroll slightly, bringing it close to his lips. He closes his eyes. He breathes out a soft, steady stream, washing over the leather binding. Not a word. A final blessing. A release. Your work is done. Rest now. He slides the scroll into the niche. It fits perfectly. A vessel returned to its harbor. He steps back. The shadows swallow it. Only the leather knot, pale against the dark stone, remains visible. A small, tight seal on 9 years of listening, persuading, and whispering truth onto fading skin. He closes the heavy wooden door to the chamber. The thud echoes in the courtyard, final. The harmattan howls its irrelevance. Brother Mele's turns. His face, etched deep by time and lamplight, holds no triumph, only a profound weathered peace. He looks at you, then at the scriptorium door. His eyes hold the quiet knowledge of a path completed, a vessel emptied. He nods once, a silent now, it is yours to carry. He walks back toward the scriptorium, not to work, but perhaps simply to sit in the company of the dust, the dove, and the lingering ghosts of ink and intention. The desert wind scours the stones. The scroll sleeps. The ninth year ends. The harmattan's roar softens to a distant sigh, like waves receding across a vast, unseen shore. In the scriptorium, the single lamp's flame has dwindled to a warm liquid ember, painting the walls with slow dancing shadows that sway like underwater reeds. The air, thick with the memory of dust and fig sap, settles around you like a heavy, comforting cloak. Brother Melee sits motionless in the deepening gloom, his silhouette a still mountain against the fading light, his breathing a slow tide in and out, matching the gentle rhythm of the dove's soft, dreaming coos from the rafters above. You feel the solid coolness of the stone floor beneath your knees, the lingering warmth of the sesame oil deep in the old knot beneath your spine. Not pain now, just a familiar landmark, a touchstone of endurance. Your fingers rest loosely on the desk, empty of the reed pen, yet still humming with the ghost of its weight, the remembered kiss of ink on thirsty skin. The honey-thick inkwell sits capped. The bone stylus sleeps beside the pumice dust. The linen scraps lie folded like fallen leaves. A deep quietness seeps into your bones, deeper than the monastery silence, deeper than the ended storm. It's the quiet of a field after harvest, a loom after the last thread is woven, a vessel gently emptied and set down. Outside, the fierce desert stars begin to pierce the thinning veil of dust, their light cool and constant, whispering ancient stories to the slumbering land. The scent of cedar from the manuscript chamber mingles with the lingering warmth of beeswax and the faint, dry sweetness of the scrolls, weaving a lullaby for the awakened soul. The dove rustles softly on its dusty beam, tucking its head deeper into feathers the color of twilight, a small, trusting anchor in the vastness of the night. Let the weight of the grindstone you carry dissolve now, sinking like a smooth stone into the still, dark pool of your being. Let the sharp edges of the gooey characters soften and blur, drifting like ash-gray feathers in the warm currents of your breath. There's no more parchment to tend tonight, no crack to bridge, no trapped light to free. Only this soft darkness, this gentle hum of a world settling, this profound piece of work completed and rest bestowed. The lamp's ember flickers once, a final golden sigh, then surrenders to the darkness. The dove's breath evens out, merging with Melee's slow, deep rhythm. The wind's last whisper fades, leaving only the vast, velvety silence of stars and stone. Your own breath deepens, slows, becoming part of the monastery's dreaming exhalation. The ache in your back is just a memory held by the earth. The ink on your fingers is just starlight. The whispered letters settle into the fertile darkness within, seeds for dreams yet to unfold. Rest now. The scroll is safe. The light is tended. The desert holds its breath. The world, in all its cracked and mended beauty, turns softly beneath the patient stars. Sleep deep. Sleep gentle. The story breathes on without you tonight. Good night.